OTB AM. It is Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock. And it should be a dramatic morning, Ger. We should be updating people on whether or not they can come into the office, whether or not they can stay at home, how Storm Barra is affecting their area. But I think we're all sort of fatigued by the idea of staying at home. It's not a novel concept anymore.
Well, tell that to my kids who were like, woohoo, when the news came through late last night. This is one of the big Christmas movies at the moment is all about Jack Frost. I don't know if you're completely immune to the charms of these Christmas movies, and he is unknown to the kids. They don't believe in him. It's like assemble the Guardians assemble, something or other. I can't remember, but we were forced to watch it the other day, and the whole point was that people don't believe in Jack Frost because why would you? And his thing was, I give them all the snow days. I give all these kids these days off. What do the rest of these guys do? They do nothing. I mean, obviously, the Tooth Fairy gives you money. So, and anyway, the point is, days off for kids, that really matters. And so they remember these things. It's a proper day off. It's not like a day off where they're actually, for the primary school kids, there's no teaching from home. There's no Zoom classes. It's like nothing to do.
Why not? Like, I mean, you've got all the facilities. It's all been set up to remote learn over the course of COVID. Kids should be at school today, at home. Like, I'm putting the foot down here. I mean, well, why not? Like,
you tell them,
give me a reason.
You can come round at 9:30 this morning when this show is over, and you can be like, right now, get out your maths books. Let's see what happens.
Didn't you all become? And I mean, you all people who were parents of primary school teachers become teachers over the course. Primary school parents, I should say, become teachers over the course of the first lockdown. Wasn't that the thing?
Yeah.
So why not just go back to it today?
Because it was horrible.
No, but like, what about your kids' education?
They'll be fine. It turns out they'll be fine. A day off here, a day off there. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. I'm just looking up. I'm not sure if you've seen the 1998 Jack Frost film.
No.
I'm familiar with it. Michael Keaton. Jack Frost. I'd completely forgotten how horrifying he looks. It is genuinely a horror. It's a horrifying sort of setup this snowman has, and I'm trying to find out whether or not this is actually a horror movie. And I've actually just completely missed this. But 1998 Jack Frost, not a friendly face. It turns out.
Okay, so don't show your kids that. That's our advice this morning.
Yeah, go for the new one.
The one thing I would say about I don't know if you remember the last time we all had like before COVID, and we thought getting locked down for a day was kind of fun, and everybody stocked up on booze and didn't go to work. It was whatever the last word was, and then all the memes did the rounds of
Desmond, wasn't it?
Garden chair. Was it?
Was it Desmond? Ophelia.
One of them was bad. One of them not bad at all. The one that we had the day off for, not bad at all. The one thing I'd say about this so far is that if anybody saw any of the footage coming from the Buffalo Bills New England Patriots game last night, that was astonishingly bad. And then they went out and played in it. It actually got better. It got good enough for them just to be able to play in. If you don't know what happened, the Patriots beat the Bills last night in a very low scoring game where the Patriots threw the ball 3 times in an hour. And
still won.
The rookie quarterback was 2 of 3. So 2 completions, 3 attempts in an hour. It was like 1960s football. And the pre-game looked pretty tasty. There was like proper squally snow. And if that's what's coming, I think we should all be at home.
Yeah, we should. Like that is one thing that either Desmond or Ophelia or whatever the hell it was in 2018, maybe 2017. Like,
hey, look, pre-COVID. You know the way it's like
I was
before Christ, AD after Christ. It's like pre-COVID, after COVID. That's what happened.
I was more productive in those 2 days off than I was for the 18 months of COVID so far. As in, I think it was February or March. I think I watched every single Oscar-nominated movie. Got them all ticked off in the space of those 2 days. Whereas over the course of COVID, it was just like a bit of Tiger King, and just waking up some morning being like, "What the hell did I do with my day yesterday?"
You watch Succession. We're going to look back in these in years to come as like, oh, that was the Succession era of TV. That's
yeah, no, the peak is here. It turns out. So let us know where you are this morning. Storm Barra, people in the West.
Did you watch Arsenal last night, or did you watch Succession last night? Did you halfway through the match go, I'm not watching this anymore. I've had enough of this.
I did both. I did both, and there was, for people who were up to speed in Succession, there was one horrifying image in the episode of Succession, not as horrifying as the image of Arsenal getting beaten by a Rafa Benitez Everton side last night. It turns out I would rather I would rather be on the receiving. I would rather be on the receiving end of a Roman Roy photographic message than to be an Arsenal fan right now. To be quite honest with you,
I don't believe you.
I would.
Okay. Well, we're not going to. No spoilers, right? That's our rules here. No spoilers. So if anybody hasn't caught up, don't worry about it. But what about Arsenal? Because we were talking ourselves. I was certainly trying to talk you into having some faith in this. But you are the hard-bitten cynic. You are the man whose soul has been crushed time and 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 time again. And you were right not to hope, Eoin, because hope is a dangerous thing.
It is a desperately dangerous thing. Do not tell me that I did not warn you and about what was about to happen, that they had been getting away with it over the course of the start of the season, that yes, they could be going in the right direction, but sometimes you can be going in the right direction and you can still get absolutely railroaded. Just because you're pointed in the right way and your compass works and your Google Maps works or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean that you have a good automobile to take you there or that you will actually reach that destination, because it doesn't seem that Arsenal are going to get there anytime soon. Like, I will say that, like, we did a quite a hopeful piece. Was it this day last week or maybe the Wednesday last week? And a lot of the things that we spoke about in the piece are still true. There are still a lot of hopeful points around the football club. There is still a plan that makes sense, and there are still a lot of things to be happy about when you're analysing the football club that is Arsenal. The problem is it's the football team now that has most of the questions about it. What is the plan that is going to be executed by this team over the next little while? What is the Mikel Arteta identity? And this is not the first time we've asked that question. This is a question that's come up time and again, and I just felt really, especially over the course of October, that there were a couple of results that could so easily have been defeats, a couple of positive results that could so easily have been defeats, and the mood music going into December would have been much more negative than it was. I just felt that there was an overachievement from Arsenal so far this season. That doesn't mean that the kids aren't going to still come good and that the Mikel Arteta might still come good, but I just felt that things were a little bit too rosy in the garden when it came to the analysis of Arsenal.
Are you not overreacting again to what happened last night? Is there not like it took an absolute wonder strike in the 94th minute for them to lose an away match. And here's the thing, Everton are not as bad as they've shown in recent weeks.
True.
I wonder, is it important that the team knows that Rafa's there for the long haul, that by sacking the head of recruitment or the football director or whatever made up title your man had, that actually they all know that Rafa is the man and that they perform, because they played quite well, I thought, in patches. Obviously, they were devastated to see Yerry Mina go off half an hour into his comeback, but like, they're not rubbish.
They're not terrible, that's for sure, but they have been. They have shown signs of being terrible over the last little while. They were better last night than Arsenal, and they deserved their win. Arsenal being 1-0 up was an unfair reflection of that first half. And let's face it, Richarlison is a couple of inches further towards the Arsenal defensive line on both of those occasions, and maybe this is actually a healthier win for Everton. Maybe not. Maybe Rafa Benitez sets his team up that when they do go a goal up, they don't actually kick on and score four. But it did show that they carved Arsenal open on a number of occasions, and that was the one area where I actually was hopeful about this Arsenal team for the last little while, the sense that actually their defence had got a bit better. Yes, there had been a couple of individual errors, like Thomas Partey, for example, has a terrible tendency to give the ball away for a player who costs so much money. But other than that, the system that they had at the back seemed to be okay. It was just creating chances was the big problem. Whereas last night, Everton had the ball in the back of the net on 4 occasions, and that is the real concern from an Arsenal standpoint after last night, is that actually if you compared this performance to, say, some of the performances in October, it looks like they're actually going backwards. And again, the same problems were present up front. Aubameyang came off the bench, was terrible. That chance he missed at the end was shocking. The Eddie Nketiah miss was an absolute... Oh my God! Like it's hard to kind of even put into words what's happening to this strike force at the moment, and that is a real concern for this team at the moment. They have started to leak goals at a time when they can't score goals, and that's going to hold them back over Christmas period.
They're creating chances of loads of talented young players. Like when you're asking what's the identity, I think the identity is that they're going to be tougher to beat. They want to keep the ball as much as they can, but they're also going to try and score quickly when they get the ball back. Like it's a mini Manchester City. It's that school. He's getting there. It's taken him a long time to clear out most of the dead wood. I don't think Aubameyang and Lacazette are in any way the future. I mean, that's not breaking any news, but like the sooner they're gone and that you're actually building the club around more reliable strikers who aren't missing sitters, then I think that, I don't know. I still think you're going the right direction.
XG was 0.91 last night, so I don't think that it created and that is, I'd imagine, a huge part of that 0.91 was 0.94. Sorry, I don't want to do them an injustice. Was Eddie Nketiah missing a header that should have gone into the back of the net? Like that's what 0.8, 0.7 of your. So other than that opportunity and the Aubameyang chance later on, let's not forget, they didn't really create all that much. Like the goal they scored was a phenomenal cross from Kieran Tierney, and it was a really, really good finish from Odegaard. And it's been those sort of moments where it's like, wow, I'm actually surprised by how clinical Arsenal were at those moments that have got them over the line in a couple of games, rather than sort of a process that has allowed them to batter teams and to actually clock goals up as a result. And like I that's too much to ask for Arsenal to be battering teams every single week. That's never going to happen for a team that are maybe the 6th best, maybe the 7th best in the league. But it just hasn't happened at any point so far this season, especially in these sort of games against a team like Everton.
Do you not believe that there is a process going?
I do. To be honest with you, I do. And if I had to make not a prediction, but if I had to make, I guess, my preference on what will happen this year, I still think it'd be nice to see Arteta get the season out of the way and get until the end of the season, because another transfer window would be interesting, but it would also be interesting just to kind of tie the season up, because I do think that while we do have a lot of evidence at our disposal now and we can judge Arsenal this season, I do think that there's maybe a little bit more as we go through this Christmas period. Can they actually figure this whole thing out? But some of the signs this season are actually just quite grim, and I think that we're back to analysing Arsenal in the sense of last season, where they don't have a plan and attack, and they will continue to I guess fail to impress a lot of people who are watching them.
They're much better than last season. They're much better. Surely that's your overreaction. That's your glass half empty coming through again, where you're like, no, you're just a broken, you're a victim of the Arsenal life.
Yeah, in fairness, they couldn't be much worse than last season. They were absolutely shocking last season, but they spent a lot of money. They did spend a lot of money, and it is just fatiguing. It is. I would like to sort of feel the acute disappointment that you might have been able to feel a long time ago, but unfortunately this is a very, very familiar feeling at this point. You could kind of see this coming a mile away, unfortunately. But that was Everton against Arsenal last night. Let's tell you what's actually coming up this morning on OTB AM, which is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to have John Stiles with us in a little while. He is the son of Nobby Stiles, and about a year ago he posted a video of the families of 3 former footballers who needed urgent help from the PFA. They all started to show signs of symptoms of CTE, and he posted a video of 3 families asking for urgent help from the PFA. A year on, nothing has happened, so we'll catch up with Nobby Stiles' son John at around 7:45, so in the next couple of minutes. The sports page is coming your way at 8:10, and then last week was the launch of the Heineken Cup, and we were speaking to a lot of the captains and a lot of the coaches, and we were asking them about a couple of important themes in rugby, and one of them was head injuries and concussion. So we're going to bring you a couple of rugby voices later on, from Ronan O'Gara to Johnny Sexton to Rob Baxter to Ellis Genge. So that's coming your way at 8:20. The sports news coming your way at 8:25 with John Duggan. Then Graham Hunter will be setting the scene for the Champions League week ahead at 8:45. Keith Barry then will be with us at 9:10 to talk about his work with a couple of athletes, some sports teams he's been working with. He's been working with Keith Earls over the last little while, so looking forward to that chat at 9:10. And then Eddie Jordan was on the show last night reflecting on an absolutely incredible Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia and setting the scene for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix this weekend. So we'll bring that your way at around 9:30 this morning. You can get in touch by tweeting us at Off The Ball or commenting on the YouTube stream as well. Brian has been in touch to say, beast from the east followed by a drought that summer. Good year to be a farmer. Loads of fun. Also, Patriots going to win the Super Bowl again. Is that a hot take, Jerry?
You might be right. It's a good take. I think Cian Fahey made the same take on the snap last Thursday. He said he's all in on the Patriots as a Super Bowl team. It is pretty amazing how quickly they've recovered from last year. Granted, half the team didn't play last year because of COVID and opt-outs and whatever, but they've gone from, they were completely Brady dependent, to losing Brady to now being one of the best teams in football because Bill Belichick is a genius. This is the final kind of confirmation that it wasn't just a Brady thing in New England. It was both a Brady and a Belichick thing, and it's going to be the most Brady-Belichick thing ever for Brady to win a Super Bowl and then Belichick to go, na 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 na, so did I, without you. And it's like, okay, right, these two together, maybe they could have won more than 6. Maybe they underachieved at 6.
Possibly. Do you think that if they do the business, that Belichick will like hire out a boat on the port of Boston and end up throwing the Lombardi trophy at one of his teammates across the water? Just go full Tom Brady on the whole celebrations.
Oh yeah, I hope so. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah. So you're thinking this thing is actually going to happen?
I think it's a really good chance. They're the best team by a mile in the AFC. So like they'll have to win. They'll have to be the Ravens, who aren't very good at the moment, or they'll have to be Patrick Mahomes at some point, who isn't very good at the moment. And that's it. They'll be through to the Super Bowl. At that point, you're going to bet against Bill Belichick and an incredible defense in the final? I don't think so.
No, absolutely not. Right, so we're going to be getting to that piece in just a moment, and we're going to be chatting to John Stiles, who's the son of Nobby, former footballer himself, of course, and a nephew of John Giles. A couple of other things this morning, John Costello's annual report has come out. We might touch on this in a bit more detail later on, but one of the big notes from it, and I'll just go through this, it's on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, is the calls to make a goal 4 points. This is an interesting development. John Costello's report, always worth reading, and he reckons that a chain of points often follows a goal, and it takes the gas out of any big moment of energy that occurs in a game. And he's saying let's bump this thing up to 4 and let's increase the energy that comes as a result of a goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might have been Anthony Daly's original idea to have 3 points for the first goal and then 4 points for every subsequent goal after that, to try and incentivise teams to get the stadiums rocking. I mean, I think you could definitely experiment with this kind of stuff. Like, would teams go for goals more often if they were worth more? They probably would. Your risk and reward would be higher. And would that be more interesting? Would it suddenly incentivise club teams to develop corner forwards as opposed to athletes? Or does it suddenly have the knock-on impact of making everybody defend the D in so much more strenuous manners that makes the game rubbish? I don't know. You'd need a proper experiment over a couple of year period.
Yeah, for sure. Let me just run you through some of the back pages this morning, just before we get to our first piece this morning. The London Times looks ahead to the Ashes in Brisbane, which gets underway there tonight. Bring it on, hostile Australia fans can motivate us, says England captain Root. The Herald, Klopp not stressed by talks with Salah. And as I mentioned there, the Irish Daily Mail going with that Costello stuff, and Rafa's relief as well on last night. Just a couple of other ones then. GAA to go cashless at turnstiles is the back of the Irish Independent. The Guardian is an Ashes like no other. Let the hostilities or even the respect begin. The Daily Telegraph is time to be brave. Root tells England to set records straight. And the Irish Times is Gray lifts a little of the gloom on an emotional night at Goodison. Right, okay, it is 7:48 on this Tuesday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Right, up next we are speaking to John Stiles, son of Nobby Stiles, about the campaign by families of former footballers for the PFA to provide greater supports. Last week he issued this video appeal.
12 months ago, we released this video.
My name is John Stiles. My dad was Nobby Stiles. I'm making this plea to the PFA Union and the trustees of the PFA charity. It is on behalf of the older players and their families. They need urgent help now. The past is gone. We cannot change that. But you can act now to help the families. You have the resources to help. This is a small sample of what is happening to many football families all over the country. Please see the video and please help now. Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Natalie Parks-Thompson. My dad's Mr Blackburn Rovers, Tony Parks. He was diagnosed last year with Alzheimer's after a long battle to get the diagnosis. But we're now at that crossroads where his behaviours have got worse. He's degenerated a lot over the course of this year. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I'm Wendy, the wife of Brendan Ormsby, who 7 years ago suffered a severe stroke. Since then, he is now developing memory loss, understanding problems. We would love it to go back to how it was, but unfortunately we can't. So all we're asking for now is some help. As we're caring, we'd like you to care.
Hello, my name's Dani Robson and I'm sat with my dad, Jimmy Robson. Up until a few years ago, my dad was healthy. Unfortunately, Alzheimer's has struck. He's deteriorated. He doesn't leave the house much. And as a family, we're finding it really hard. But we just need some more help. We need some help from the PFA to just support my dad. Don't we, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, we can help him more. We can do things. He's got people to help him and people to look after him. Because you're a treasure, aren't you?
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah. So we just want him to be supported. He's loved football all his life. He's followed football all his life. We just want football to give something back to him.
12 months later, these families still need help. Once again, I ask the PFA and the trustees of the PFA charity to please give these families the help they desperately need. Thank you.
John Stiles, a very good morning. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So 12 months on from releasing that video, how much do you feel has changed, and how much of a reaction initially to that video 12 months ago did you get?
There was a big I don't know, there was lots of hits on Twitter and what have you. Just this time last year, the families were getting absolutely no help at all from the PFA. And then early this year, they set up a dementia department. So help was starting to be given out to some of the families. But it was only, so say, for example, they were having carers in at home. They'd be given some money to pay for the carers while they were at home. But as soon as they go into long-term healthcare, in other words, they're that poorly, they have to go into long-term healthcare, that stops and they get absolutely nothing. And to me, that's a disgrace.
Was there any reaction from the PFA, any response from them last year?
Well, not directly to me, but there'd been a big campaign. Chris Sutton, obviously, Dawn Astle's been campaigning a long time. I got involved, and then this decided to set up this dementia branch, and which is fine, which is they're helping people at home, maybe, give some money for carers. But my big thing is, if you accept that heading the ball has caused this damage, which I believe it has, and this is why all these men are so poorly, surely the biggest thing they've got to sort out is long-term residential care. And I can't name the families, but I know a couple of families who've pleaded for help recently, and they've heard nothing back. So that's why we re-released the video. I think it got 80,000 hits. I don't understand all this technology really, but these families are really desperate and they really need help. And football should be looking after them. It shouldn't just be the PFA, it should be the FA and all the rest of it, but the first port of call is the PFA. And they've got over £50 million in the PFA charity.
John, why do you think there is any reluctance on the part of the PFA and the FA at the moment? Because it seems like it's a very simple, straightforward win for them. And certainly it's the type of thing that they could ring fence money from the Premier League for. We're reading so much about the pyramid at the moment and the future of football in England and how the Premier League is going to have to support the football pyramid and the Super League is going to be stopped. One very easy thing for them to do would be to say, OK, we're going to get the money to fix this.
Well, I think it's going to be a massive problem. I think there's hundreds of players who are suffering. So in the long run, the PFA probably won't be able to cover all the costs because it's very expensive. But they could make a start. And to me, football has fortunes in it. But it's a tricky situation. If you've got a union where the subs from the players don't actually cover all the expenses and you're reliant on the money from the Premier League, the 28, 30 million pounds a year, that then becomes a complicated situation. But I don't really understand all the mechanics of that, but that just seems to be a tricky situation. I don't see why, with all this money washing about, they can't. I think it's 1.6 billion a year they get into football. I don't understand why a small portion of that can't be allocated to these players. To me, the Willie Stewart studies are massive evidence that heading the ball is what's caused the damage to these players. And they should just do it. They should just do it and get on with it, but they won't. And it's very frustrating and it's very, very upsetting when I speak to families and I can hear in their voices how desperate they are.
I can only imagine that it's frustrating for you for a number of different reasons because you've actually lived this, you've seen this, your dad's situation, and I know Willie Stewart analysed your dad's situation. The CTE that he had was one of the most egregious examples, and I think you guys figured out that your dad must have headed the ball between 80,000 and 100,000 times.
There or thereabouts. I mean, we did donate Dad's brain. It was a difficult decision, but my mum was brave enough to do it. She didn't want anybody, if it could help, stop somebody else suffering like Dad did. We do it, and Dad's brain was riddled with CTE. But as in most cases, he was actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. It wasn't the case. It's not rocket science. Your brain's a piece of jelly in a hard casing. If you jolt that severely 70 to 100,000 times, there's going to be an effect. It's as obvious as smoking and lung cancer to me. But they'll resist and they'll try not to do it. But sooner or later, they're going to have to accept it.
And by accept it, you mean you think that they should ban heading of the football totally?
No,
Is that?
I'm a football fan. I'm not advocating banning heading, but I've started going out recently, giving out. Last week I went to a football club, Doncaster Rovers, my original club, one of my last clubs, and I started giving out leaflets to players because, as far as I'm aware, the current players have never had one piece of literature explaining the dangers of heading the ball. At least they should be informed, so then they can make their own choices. But I didn't know when I was playing. And Chris Sutton, spoke to him a while ago, I heard him interviewed, he said that if he'd have known that the risk was there, because his father died with dementia after playing football, he wouldn't have headed the ball as much in training. And nothing's been done. I mean, this latest thing, you can only have 10 high-impact headers a week. It's ridiculous. They've just pulled that out of the air from nowhere. They've not consulted Willie Stewart or anything. It's just fobbing everything off. They don't want to accept that this is a massive, massive problem in football. Football's the only sport where your head is used to propel an object. It's the only sport. And to me, it's just blatantly obvious.
What measures would you like to see introduced? Or is it about just actually finding out what the science says and then using the science as the guideline as opposed to, as you say, plucking stuff out of thin air?
Well, we've got the science. I mean, Willie Stewart's done 2 studies. And the first one established that footballers were 3 times more likely to get dementia. And then the second one was depending on your position, i.e. a centre forward or a centre half, a defender who headed the ball lots, and the length of your career, you were 5 times more likely to get dementia. So the authorities have been hiding behind, we need more studies. For me, the evidence is there. And I'm going to try and warn these players, the current players, of the dangers, because nobody else is going to do it.
What's the reception like from the current players when you speak to them, John?
Well, I've only done one club, to be honest with you, and I gave some leaflets out to the players, and the players were great. They thanked me and all the rest of it. Then I was ejected from the premises. I went outside, waved a few cars down, gave them the leaflets. They were all very polite. They're just good young lads, want to play football. And then the last car said to me, I'm sorry, we've been told we can't speak to you anymore.
Why was that? Well, did they give you any reason or any reason that they were given for why they couldn't speak to you?
Well, I never got that far. The clubs probably don't want to hear it. I have now written to every single one of the 92 league clubs and the All Women's Super League clubs asking if I can come and talk to them about the risks of heading. I've had a couple of responses asking for more information. And I'll deal with that, shortly. But this is the big dark secret in football about heading the ball. There's just so many examples. We've got scientific evidence of Willie Stewart, and obviously I've got personal evidence with my dad and his brain. And it's just something that I won't stop campaigning about. This needs to be. I'm not saying ban heading from football, but 20 years ago, a coroner said that heading the ball killed Jeff Astle. That should have been enough for there to be a big reaction. There was nothing. So it's just not right, and it needs sorting out. And these families of all these ex-players, when they need the real help, which is the long-term care, they've been abandoned.
What's next for your campaign, John? How do you keep this going? Where do you take it to?
Well, this morning I'm going out leafleting at a football club to give the players some more leaflets. As I say, I've written to all the clubs. I should be going to other clubs to give out leaflets and try and make everybody aware of the situation. At least if the players have got the information about the real dangers, then they can make a choice. like, for example, boxers do. Then if they say, well, yes, I know I'm going to get damaged and it's up to me, then that's up to them. But at least they should be informed. They should be told that if you go out and head the ball 30, 40 times a day, 3 days a week, over 10 to 15 years, there's a very good chance you're going to get CTE.
John, I've one last question for you. These leaflets you're talking about, you've got them printed yourself. This isn't, you're not a representative of any other organisation.
No.
Yeah. Shouldn't it be the PFA doing this though? Should they be the ones like looking after their workers? It's kind of like if you're actually a proper union looking after your own members, you don't limp it like suck to the organisation that's actually not looking after the players. You're supposed to be protecting them. You should be giving them the information.
Well, they've got the information. I can't speak for them. I can't. I just know that I have to do this, because if I don't do this and I don't try and make these players aware, I won't be able to live with myself.
John, if we're having a conversation again in 12 months' time, where do you want this conversation to be? I guess because it seems that in the space of the 12 months since you've initially released this video, I guess there is a depressing predictability about the lack of movement from the powers that be in the sport. So what would you like to see happen over the next year?
Well, there has been a call by the new CEO to the authorities to get a fund together, although whilst requesting that fund, it was specifically said that it excluded long-term health care. So how can you ask for help and then when the real help's needed, say it's excluded? That to me is ridiculous. What I would like in 12 months' time is to be a large fund established to help the families who are in real need in long-term health care. I'd also like the players, every player, to know the risks, i.e. that they're between 3 and 5 times more likely to develop early onset dementia, not just dementia, early onset. The players start in the late 50s, early 60s. So I'd like them to be aware, and I'd like the fund to be created, and I'd like to see if there's some help for players like me where the damage is already done, if there's anything that can be done for us before we develop symptoms.
Look,
go for it, Ger.
On a personal level, you must have that similar concern. You played football for a long time. You know, you played for Shamrock Rovers in Ireland. Like, you must have a concern that this is part of your future as well.
I absolutely do, and I spoke to a lot of players recently. You know, from all levels, and a couple of Republic of Ireland internationals, and they said to me, "I'm terrified. I'm terrified." I got actually asked from one, "Can I have a test?" I said, "Well, there's no real tests about at the minute. You can go to the doctor and to see if you've got dementia, but there's no real tests to look at the brain." I think that's now changing. I think there's a couple of opportunities for players to have cognitive tests and all the rest of it. But players are terrified. I was at a function last week with 2 or 3 ex-players, centre forwards, centre halves. Said, you know, every day I forget something. I think, oh, has it started? Because once it starts, it only gets worse. It's effectively a terminal brain disease. That's what it is. And yes, I'm worried. Although I spent a lot of my career on the bench, but I think a lot of players are very, very concerned, especially getting into their late 50s, early 60s. Mm-hmm.
Because while you say there that maybe it's not as huge a topic in the current playing group, it does seem from what you're saying there that within retired footballers in their 50s or older, it becomes a real concern for those players, for those former players.
Yeah, it does. But see, players have never been made aware of this. Never. I mean, my dad used to go to 66 reunions with all the lads, and they'd never talk about it. The last thing they want to talk about is getting dementia. Mm. But they've never been given the information, and this is my point. Players have never, ever been given information, and it's only the fact that so many of the old players are coming down with dementia that it's getting a profile with the other players who are in the late 50s, early 60s. Players younger than that probably aren't even talking about it, or ex-players. So this awareness, it needs to be brought out, because in my opinion, it's a massive sporting scandal that it's not been recognised, and it's blatantly obvious to me.
And John, you said you're going to another football club this week. Is it like you don't expect a similar reaction to the one you got at Doncaster Rovers, do you?
I really don't know, and I don't care really.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do my best. I've written to the clubs. The ones who write back, I will communicate and try and get into a situation where I can inform the players. But it's not something the clubs really want to hear, I don't think. But it's there and it's not going away. So I'll probably get the same reaction. But I'm not bothered. I just want to try and make these players aware of the risks, so at least they can make an informed decision. 20 years ago, Jeff Astor was diagnosed. Since then, all of the players in that time have been uninformed and unprotected. And for a lot of them, the damage is already done. So I want to stop that if I can, and I'll do everything I can to stop it.
Listen, John, it's been great chatting to you. You're doing absolutely fantastic work. Thanks a million for your time this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. John Stiles there, son of Nobby Stiles, with us on OTB AM. We've got a packed show still to come here. It is 6 minutes past 8. We're going to hear from Graham Hunter a little bit later on as the Champions League resumes, and Keith Barry will be with us after 9 o'clock as well. The papers are up next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Welcome back. 7 minutes past 8 on this Tuesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. It's brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We are going to have a look at some of the stories now this morning. OTBsports.com. I'm getting a bit worried. Pat Nevin on Everton's downward spiral. That is good timing there. Still have that as the main story. Possibly on the upward spiral after last night. United States confirm diplomatic boycott of Beijing Winter Olympics, and Everton fan walkout falls short of the mark. How many people do you think walked out last night, Ger? Can you put a number on it?
7 or 8.
I think Richard Jolly was saying that actually in the stadium it looked like there was like a noticeable absence of people, that you just kind of had to be there to appreciate the true magnitude of the walkout.
Wasn't there was an injury at the time, and the lads on the commentary were like, maybe they just got out for a drink, which I suspect is kind of what happened.
I think there was a corner as well, wasn't there, around the 26th minute, and they just waited to see Richarlison overcook it, and then they left. God, little did they know that he was about to score a hat-trick essentially.
Well, I mean, they've missed a brilliant victory and an amazing goal by Demarai Gray. Like, I don't know, if they're going to organise against the owner, you got to be careful what you wish for, because you could end up with another Mike Ashley situation, you know?
Absolutely. A couple of stories from the papers. I brought them to you a little bit earlier on. Just to kind of finish up on this Sean Costello story, was there anything else from this report that stuck out to you other than the 4 points for a goal idea?
There was, I suppose, the COVID breach was the other thing that came up, and while they said that they were wrong and that they took action immediately and they suspended Desi, it's funny. It's like it's ironic in that he quoted interviews that several of the footballers had done recently. So he quoted an interview that Dean Rock had done, that Brian Fenton had done. And they were saying this should never have happened, and we want to move on, but we appreciate now that there's more to life than football. And then he also goes out about the media. Now, I think he didn't name the organisation specifically, but I suspect it's the independent group, because they were the ones who printed the story, saying that they were constantly looking for stories around the COVID breach. And, like, that's the job of media organisations sometimes, is to check and see what organisations like football teams are doing, because people are interested in it, you know. I actually don't know what to make of the whole massive story. I still remember the fact that, like, we were texting people on the morning of April the 1st going, is this an April Fool's? I mean, you know, like, it wouldn't, it would be a shit April Fool's, but it wouldn't be beyond the bounds possibility for something like this to. So I don't know. Like, no one cares about it anymore, do they?
No. I think that pretty quickly, actually, it became a sort of thing where people stopped caring about it. At the moment, it was a big deal for sure, and it definitely, you have to kind of look at it in that context as well, given where we are. Like,
well, we spoke to Fenton recently, and we spoke to McManus recently, and didn't ask either of them about the COVID breaches, which was like the main story of the summer last year, because afterwards we're like, oh, should we have done that? And I had completely forgotten about Monaghan's COVID breach. So I don't know. The other thing that obviously came up was Proposal B. He does not say that he voted in favour of Proposal B. Instead, in the section on Proposal B, it's like the proposal definitely wasn't perfect. There are these following issues with it. But there's no indication that Dublin were one of the counties who voted with the majority of counties who voted in favour of Proposal B. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up next. There was, I can't even remember the specific weird concern, but it was something about, too many games. That was it. There's going to be too many games. I'm like, what? Some clubs had suggested that the number of games running from the league into the knockout stages would be difficult for players to balance. I'm like, but that's not what the players are saying. The players are saying that they want more games, less training. And they've been saying that for a long period of time now. So the absence of the players from the thinking on Proposal B was interesting, because the players were the ones who were used as the explainer about how the county board felt around the COVID breach, and they were also the ones who were thanked for the incredible achievement of winning whatever it was, 84 successive championship matches. So just thought there was a little bit of disconnect there in the thinking.
It's interesting as well, because I guess this conversation came back up yesterday. Like this sort of convention report season tends to throw up things from the year that was, the things that were on the agenda over the course of the last year. But this week has almost kind of allowed us to point forward to next year and to what the new Proposal B is going to look like, and to what the next thing on the agenda is going to be. And it was like really interesting listening to Kevin O'Donovan on the show yesterday morning, talking about how this thing can be turned around quickly for next year, and how this thing needs to be kept front and centre. And maybe in a perverse way, all the county secretaries and CEOs talking about the failings of Proposal B actually bring this right back into the spotlight. And all of a sudden we're like, hold on, actually, the next Congress is only 3 months away. We do need to be talking about this right now.
Yeah, we do. We definitely need to be talking about it to try and win people over, because they have said that it will be on the clár. It will definitely be up for discussion. Whatever is coming is going to be up for discussion. So whatever backroom deals are trying to be done by those people who don't want change, and let's face it, everybody says they want change, but I think as Kevin alluded to yesterday, some people talk a good game when it comes to it. That's happening now. Whatever smears are going to be out against the proposal as it comes forward, B+ or whatever we're going to call it, that's happening in the background now. So let's wait and see.
Yeah, people conjuring up arguments against it. A couple of other things, like the Champions League is back tonight. Just to kind of run through what some of the fixtures to look out for are. Like tonight, there's a lot of these things. It does feel that there's more sort of capital Qs beside teams in the final round of the Champions League this year than there usually is, or maybe that's always the way, and it's just a little bit of recency bias here. But like when you look at in the context of games tonight, for example, in the Champions League, there are only 2 spots up for grabs, really. Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City are both assured of progression. Real Madrid and Inter Milan, both assured of progression. Liverpool and Ajax, both going through as well. So tonight, the games you want to be looking at are FC Porto against Atletico Madrid at 8 o'clock. And then you've got the hipster group, as we blessed it at the start of the campaign. Ajax, Sporting Lisbon, Borussia Dortmund and Besiktas. It's a Lisbon versus Dortmund face-off, but it's Dortmund at home to Besiktas, and Amsterdam, Ajax at home to Sporting Lisbon. But Sporting Lisbon with a 3-point cushion on Dortmund in that group at the moment, so might not be as dramatic as we think. And then tomorrow night, I mean, we kind of earmarked this a few weeks back, Atlanta versus Villarreal. in Manchester United's group as a massive fixture in that essentially winner goes through. And then Group G, the other hipster Group B, has nobody going through in that one. That's the Lille, Salzburg, Sevilla, Wolfsburg group where everybody can qualify in that one. So Group G is where it's at tomorrow night. But probably it's going to be Bayern Munich versus Barcelona tomorrow, because Barcelona, while they do have a 2-point cushion on Benfica are at home to Dinamo Kiev. They will win that. They will go to 8 points, which means Barcelona probably need to beat Bayern Munich, which just creates this fantastic scenario tomorrow night where that is probably the game of the round. We're going to be chatting to Graham Hunter about that a little bit later on. But one of the other facets going into that, Ger, is the fact that Mo Salah has been linked with Barcelona. This is something that's come up over the last couple of days. At this point it is idle speculation, but El Nacional reckons Xavi wants Salah at all costs, which would likely involve a salary of around 350 grand a week for a club completely ridden by debt. The story suggests that the arrival of the new coach opens the door for Barca. And then Salah has said that I read what was said about Xavi's interest to sign me. This is something that makes me happy that a team like Barcelona is interested in me. But I'm happy in Liverpool and we will see what happens in the future. At the moment, I prefer to stay in the Premier League as it's the strongest league in the world. So it's not nothing, but I think that if it was somebody that's not completely riddled with debt, as I say, you might be tending to believe it a little bit more.
Is it not nothing? Are we sure it's not nothing? There's a scene in The Sopranos where Uncle June talks about Angie Dickinson. It's like somebody wants something and Uncle June says something that I can't repeat on a breakfast radio show, and I want to, and it's like that's what I kind of hear when I hear Barcelona. I hear Uncle June going, it's ridiculous. Hey, Barcelona, let's see who Barcelona can afford for free. They are shopping in the bargain basement at the moment. They're rummaging around at the back of the couch for anybody who wants to come to wear the jersey. I mean, the best thing they have is that, like, you can be the successor to Romario, the original Ronaldo, Diego Maradona, Leo Messi. But you're going to be writing your own history here, buddy, because the rest of the team is just not good enough at the moment. We've got some brilliant, talented kids, but they are still kids. Beaten at the weekend in a game at home against an inferior opposition, like, that's cool the jets. They need to drastically reshape that squad, get rid of all the dead wood, and then maybe they can pile all their money into a heap and try and get somebody. But unless Erling Haaland has some weird romance in his system that he wants to be the saviour of a team like Barcelona, then he's not going to go there. And Mo Salah, why would he go there? He's the best footballer in the world at the moment. He can go to wherever he wants and he can get paid whatever he wants. And that's what he should do.
It's becoming more of a feature of the back pages almost every day at this point, the Mo Salah contract. Whether or not the Barcelona links are ever going to come to fruition, I'm not sure. But the Mo Salah contract, like, you got the Irish Times here, Liverpool stalled over Salah contract. The first paragraph doesn't exactly fill you with confidence if you're hoping for Mo Salah to sign a contract anytime soon. Jurgen Klopp has said Liverpool need time to finalise new contract terms with Mohamed Salah, and the current impasse is completely normal for a player of his stature. Anybody who says anything is completely normal, I tend to believe that something is not fully normal with the current situation. He said last week it was up to Fenway Sports Group to solve the issue. That was Mo Salah, and then he said your financial value shows how much the club appreciates you and they are ready to do anything for you to stay. Obviously there's a magnifying glass over everything he is saying at the moment, and every time he's asked about it, and the same goes for Jurgen Klopp at this point. How do you see this thing playing out? Like, it doesn't seem that it's overly straightforward at the moment.
It is straightforward. Everyone just needs to spend whatever money it's going to be and get it done.
But they've made it not straightforward. Because what is the reason what is the reason to not offer him whatever they're going to offer him in the end anyway?
The only potential reason is that they believe that their transfer targets are going to end up being a younger version but similarly effective. Like, if they could sign another Diogo Jota at the same price and sell Salah for 3 times that, would they do that? Is that a deal that this club, who have been run unbelievably frugally, like, bear in mind, if you look at the transfer spend, they're not in the top 4 in England over the last period of time. The model, the Glazers get accused of taking loads of money out of the club. Everybody else gets accused of having their ulterior motives. Because Fenway Sports Group have delivered success, people have kind of given them a free pass for the fact that they don't invest huge amounts of money in the playing squad. So I would just until that deal is done, I suppose, right? And I'm talking myself out of what I originally said. It is very straightforward. Pay the man the money. If you're purely interested in football for glory and winning, you pay the man the money and you deal with whatever comes after that. But they obviously think that like there's nothing to be gained by paying that money now, which does leave open the possibility that they could sell him. But I don't know. If they sell him, I don't think that you can just magic this together. And if they sell him, I think that it'll have an impact on Klopp's desire to stay long term, because it will be, okay, you're forcing me to be the alchemist again, and there's only so often that I can do that. Like, Klopp is obviously a genius in terms of football management, man management, the ability to stakeholder manage, whatever it is that you need to do to be a proper top quality international or manager in a Premier League at the moment. He's got it. But would he be exhausted by trying to find a replacement for Mo Salah? I think he would. Unless you're saying they've got Haaland, they know he's coming, they're going to get him cheap and they're going to sell Salah and make a profit, then fair enough. Maybe that's in the background here. I don't know. But it doesn't appear to be in the background, and it would be a shock if they were able to replace Salah with somebody better or equally as good and make money on that deal.
Especially in the short term. Somebody that's going to come in and have that track record immediately and fit into Jurgen Klopp's style of play with that sort of effect. That even if you look around at Europe and some of the great young players, you mentioned Haaland there, I mean, that takes a while to structure a team around Erling Haaland, doesn't it? That's a completely different system that will get the best out of him. Or maybe not. Maybe he's just so good that actually everything is just so seamless, and Klopp is such a good manager that it really only will take just a couple of weeks of pre-season and all of a sudden he's ready to score 30 goals in a campaign. But like maybe the one bargaining chip here that Liverpool do have is they can say to Mo Salah, well, where are you going to go? Not that they would ever say that to him, but in the back of their minds there is sort of who is actually going to come up with the cash for you, given how bankrupt some of your potential suitors actually are. Like, this just felt like a way more realistic proposition in 2018, 2019 than it does now. I mean, it's a vastly different environment. The Premier League is stronger, and almost you'd be looking to another Premier League club if somebody was going to pick up Mo Salah at this point, or make a big move for Mo Salah.
Newcastle United, they're going to pay me $1 million a week. Thanks very much, off I go.
He will do
It's hard to turn down $1 million a week, wouldn't it?
In the Championship next year. If he wants to play the Championship, he can go and play the Championship. But that maybe down the line, maybe he goes and his swan song is under Steven Gerrard at Newcastle United or something like that. That's the alternate reality here. Right, it is 8:22 on this Tuesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. It is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So all this week we want to give you the chance to win a Whoop 4.0 digital fitness tracker, all with a 12-month membership for you and two mates. Plus you'll win a €1,000 cash prize. So kickstart your Christmas by sharing your fitness goals with two friends. All you need to do is go to Off The Ball's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook page, find the post and follow the instructions. It's all with thanks to our friends at Whoop. Check out whoop.com for more info. Right, up next, ahead of the kick-off of the Heineken Champions Cup, we got the chance to talk about Concussion with some of the head coaches and captains preparing for the tournament.
The game's not safe, is it? It's not a safe game by any means, like, at all, but it's a contact sport. I've never had a concussion, touch wood. But one of my mates retired from concussion, Dominic Ryan. I'm sure you know who he is, the 7 from Leinster. He's a good friend of mine. And I never, not that I didn't believe in concussion, of course I knew it was a thing, but it wasn't like highly documented, I guess. When Dippy was suffering with his head knocks, and then he got one against Northampton, I was good mates with him, used to go around his house, and he couldn't come out during the day because the light was affecting him so much. And I thought, that's so dark, quite literally. So that was when it sort of opened my eyes up to it. So no, I don't think the game's safe ever. I think they're trying to make it safe with all the new protocols with those gum shield chips and that sort of stuff. Not my cup of tea, but I understand completely why people are pushing it so much. Obviously, you've got the older boys now suffering with a few mental issues, so I understand.
Well, I think there's probably there's two parts to this for me. I think there's the understanding from the age of 6 to 12 about educating a player where to put his head. That applies to anything related to the tackle, because there is a simple process and understanding. It's the same as goal kicking, and the tackling technique is exactly the same. You have to practice, but you have to understand why you're doing it. So there are certain rules that you got to place with your head, with your chin, with your ear, with your arm, with your knee, to understand how to tackle correctly. So the younger you learn a skill, the easier it is for everybody. What becomes a little bit dangerous is when you have people taking up the game and they aren't educated or coached from 18 years of age, when they are probably quite a decent physical specimen. So that's where it can become a little bit reckless. But in terms of the professional element of the game, I think and I've been involved in it for a long time, the progress in the last number of years in relation to concussion, or educating the environment in which we play and which we coach, has changed completely. The mindset of players has changed. I think the understanding of what is good for your mental health and for your physical health has completely transformed. And for me nowadays, which is great, towards the management team and the medical team work in great harmony to make sure that any player who has had a headbang will be looked at with the most professional care possible. It's staggering, because I can remember when I played, and I retired in 2013, to where we are now. It's like a complete different sport.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else in that regard, but I've always had the best of care within the Leinster environment, with the Irish teams that I've been involved in, even going back to my time in Racing, when I had the sort of stand down period where I picked up a couple of knocks in a row, and then they thought it was best for me to take some time off. So I've been really well looked after, so I can only speak for myself, and it's been excellent.
I think I applaud World Rugby and rugby people around the world in the manner in which they've addressed that, because we have to look after our players. We have to make sure our game is as safe as it can be, being a collision sport. So I think a lot of good work's been done around that, and long may that continue. So I do think the players' well-being, both on and off the football field, is now something that's really seen to be important. It's not that it wasn't important before, but it's certainly come to the forefront of people's minds, and I think the game's only going to be better for that.
Well, I think even the fact that it's a big discussion, the fact that it's a big issue, the fact that it's a topic that's discussed a lot, straight away is a positive. It shows that there's an understanding that it's a serious thing. It's there's a lot of people invested in trying to make the game safer and better and protect the participants. It's just really the awareness, the communication, the discussions around the issue has really rapidly advanced in the last, I don't know how many years, 5 or 7 years or something like that. And it's, with that level of interest and investment by everyone and commitment, it can only be a positive thing for our game. And, there's a lot of invested stakeholders in the game, and I think, improving technique, improving player safety, improving education, all those sorts of things. We've made big strides. There's still a long way to go, obviously. But I think the awareness now and the spirit of all the people involved in rugby to try to improve is a really strong and positive message.
Well, the big thing has been open as well. I think the game is learning all the time, for sure. We're lucky here. I say a lot. I think we're very, very fortunate here in terms of the medical care that we do have, and the access to quality external care as well. And for the players' point of view, we want to make sure that they're taken care of in the best possible way. And we're learning all the time. We've had players that have had to retire with concussion, so it's something that we take very, very seriously. There's the career and all the rest, but there's the whole life that players need to lead beyond their rugby career. So There's very, very positive developments all the time. And yeah, hopefully that'll continue. So it's something that we're definitely keen to push, and obviously World Rugby are doing their best to push that as well. And we've had, it's been well documented, in the past and in more recent times we've had players, but it's important we're all treating them on an individual basis as well. So, but the duty of care piece is very, very important.
If you keep scrums and mauls as a dominant factor within the game, they're straight away areas where you don't have concussive injuries. So what if we've done it again a little bit with the 22 with the 5 meter drop with the goal line dropout. If that had gone back to a 5 meter scrum, there's a period there where that becomes attritional between a pack of forwards. But no, we actually go straight into quite a quick dropout again and straight back into phase play. We are a sport who are quite poor at tying things together. And it's one of those things, that's the kind of stuff we need to stop. And it's a little bit like when people are saying, if you depower some of those forward contests, you're not really tiring out forwards. You'll create a lot of players on their feet who can all defend and can all make tackles. We don't really seem to want much of a congested area around rucks. We start talking about, who's allowed to do what at ruck time, and you can't go off your feet and all this sort of stuff. Well, people off their feet, people out of the game is what creates space everywhere. And so if you want to create, I know it sounds a bit, you create less collisions by grouping people together. And you group people together at lineouts, at rucks, at scrums, because that's what creates space to run through. But most law changes, if you look at them, try to get 15 people on their feet all over the pitch for as long as possible. It doesn't take a genius, does it, to work out what you're trying to create.
Yeah, interesting stuff from some of the captains and head coaches ahead of the Heineken Champions Cup, which of course gets underway this weekend. We're going to have live commentary throughout the season here on Off the Ball. Right, it is 8:32. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Plenty of comments coming through this morning. Richard Redballs has been in touch, Ger, to say Ger got some seasonal work in a Santa's grotto. Succession is so overrated, by the way, in my opinion. I'm more of a Billions lad myself. It does look like a Santa's grotto, and I would disagree on the Succession bit. Ger on mute there. I suspect Santa has got his mic turned off.
Well, that's just ridiculous, Owen, isn't it? On mute after all this period of time. Who would have been too stupid to be able to use the computer? Yes, it is Santa's grotto. It sounds like one of the elves making an entry again.
In Body Trust has also been in touch to say just ignoring Paris Saint-Germain needs to replace Mbappe this summer, in reference to our chat about Mo Salah earlier on. It's a good point, to be fair. There will be a lot of cash to spend from a Paris Saint-Germain perspective, especially the need to replace Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, pay attention. Kylian Mbappe exists.
A couple of other stories just to touch on. In the Irish Examiner, there's an interesting one. Ian Mallon writing that UEFA launched measures to prevent something like Ireland happening again. What are we, 2 years on now, really, from the full expose of the financial ruin that had happened upon the FAI, and UEFA now are saying that there needs to be retraining done, there needs to be measures put in place to ensure that we can learn from the Ireland situation.
Doesn't it make you proud, Owen, to realise that we've changed the course of football history? That the entire football world, i.e. UEFA, have looked at us and gone, that can never be allowed to happen again. And here are the measures we must take. There's some dynamite quotes in it that UEFA kind of feel a little bit guilty about how much they had not paid attention to what was going on. And funnily enough, what's going to happen here is that UEFA are going to try and bring in new rules, and the rest of the world is going to be like, hang on a second. No, you can't have all my financial details. I'm not giving you my bank accounts. What is this? What kind of fishing exercise is this? And the rest of the world is going to look at us and go, well, you really ruined it for us, didn't you? But corruption in football is a real thing. And UEFA have decided that they need to take any opportunity available to talk about it. One of the things they're going to do is send all the CFOs and CEOs and board members to school to teach them how finances should work. And I suspect there's going to be like a whole section on Ireland and how it shouldn't work. So fair play. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out with this in the long run. But I don't know if you saw it as well yesterday. UEFA announced that Ireland have the FAI have won a governance award.
Right.
But the new broom is sweeping things so clean that we're now champions of governance.
Well, congratulations to everybody involved. I didn't realise that they'd won a governance award. FAI wins UEFA Grow Award. Their ongoing governance reform has been honoured by the UEFA at its Grow Awards, which recognise National Football Association achievements in 8 areas of strategic development, with the FAI winning in the Organisational Development Project category. So, Organisational Development Project, we're leaders. Can we say that about ourselves?
Exactly, yeah. I think one last piece, in the last few paragraphs of Ian Mallon's piece, there's also deep discomfort in Neon, which is where UEFA are based, at how the FAI is effectively now under the ownership of the Irish government. UEFA and FIFA object to any state interference in member associations. This is the battle lines being drawn for what's coming down the tracks. Like, the country did pump a load of money into the FAI to save it, and I suspect that at some point the FAI are going to have to get out from underneath that to feel more independent. So the FAI politics are going to get interesting again, because if you look at what happened at the weekend with the under-14 decision, and how the league clubs didn't think that was a good idea, but the schoolboys clubs all think that's great, you can begin to see the bubbling up of, I would argue, the old issues in the FAI, which caused a figure like Delaney to be able to come to power. You know, sport in Ireland is factional and it is self-interested, and this carries across all of our major sports and all of our minor sports. You can see that sports administration is always difficult because people are amateur in the best and worst sense of the word who are doing it, and I don't know, let's wait and see. But the FAI managed to reach up to a global position where now everybody's going, don't do what they did.
They're trying to identify who the other Irelands are out there, is one of the lines from one of the UEFA sources as well in the piece. So that's in page 2 and 3 of the Irish Examiner sports section this morning. Worth checking out for sure. John Duggan is with us in studio this morning. John, how are you getting on?
Good, Eoin and Jerry, yourselves.
Yeah, good. What have you been keeping an eye on over the last little while?
We'll come to John Costello's report from yesterday, the Dublin secretary, in a moment. I suppose we'll just go through the sports news to start. And Everton beating Arsenal 2-1, much to your displeasure, Eoin. We had that Damari Gray, that fantastic goal. 1.7 million is all he cost in the summer, and it was a perler of a shot. To bring Everton to 12th in the table now, 8 points off the drop zone, so a little bit of safety. Marcel Brandt is gone. The power struggle has been won. The first power battle with Benitez and Everton. And Benitez is very positive after the game. Richarlison had a good game, had a couple of goals disallowed. And let's hear now from Seamus Coleman.
You hurt when you lose games of football. You hurt when you make mistakes. The Liverpool game, I take responsibility. I feel that we were getting back in the game. I made a mistake, but I've been around long enough to take the ups and the downs. You can't get too high, you can't get too low. And whatever bit of criticism you get, you've got to take it in the chin, because that's part and parcel of football. You come in the next day, you work hard, and your luck eventually turns. And thankfully, Demi helped us over the line tonight.
I love that leadership from Seamus Coleman. Manager in waiting, whenever it's going to be.
There was a little bit last night, I can't remember the exact quote, but obviously himself and Damari Gray were standing beside each other being interviewed on Sky Sports afterwards, and Seamus Coleman kind of indirected him. He was like, you got to work hard, you got to be showing up with the right attitude every single day. And it was kind of like a silence from one who's like, which of course Damari's been doing this week, and he got rewarded with his goal. I just wonder, was there a little bit of a sort of, you've been good this season, but you've been maybe a little bit inconsistent. Patchy is right, and like, he started off so well, and maybe the last couple of months hasn't been sensational, but what a goal last night, and what a player.
Yeah, it's been a good signing, as I said, and Everton, who I would have almost... Arsenal played last night like Everton have been playing the last few weeks, lacking character, lacking a backbone. And it's back to the drawing board, I think, for Mikel Arteta. I was going through the goal difference, lads. Like, the top 3 teams, City plus 23, Liverpool plus 32, Chelsea plus 26, West Ham plus 9, United, who are 6th or plus 1. Every other club in the Premier League has got a negative goal difference.
And United only just got there. That was a crappy question last week, wasn't it?
Well, I haven't been tuning in since my last appearance, because I'm the Kaiser Soze of the crappy quiz, as we all know.
Sorry, and West Ham, obviously, as you mentioned there, the top 4 are the only ones, which kind of shows a bit of a chasm between them.
Yeah,
and
big
the
time. We have Jurgen Klopp talking about Mo Salah at the moment, saying, look, it's all cool about the contract. It's not like having a cup of tea where you sort things out in an afternoon. It'll take a while. His deal expires 2023. Liverpool have already qualified for the last 16 of the Champions League. They play AC Milan in Italy tonight at 8. 5:45 is the start time for City against RB Leipzig. City also through as group winners. Interesting that Pep Guardiola publicly called out Kevin De Bruyne and said, "You got to earn your place in the team, mate." This is after he had COVID. He's all these injury issues, ankle ligament damage, and they issued the Champions League final with Jack Grealish as well. It's just no guarantee you're going to get in that City team. Raheem Sterling was in the cold for a while. He seems to come back into the fray. So very much that you earn it with City at the moment. And a story in the Irish Times about Leopardstown attendances, the big 4-day festival, one of the highlights of many people's year, could be reduced even further. Capped at 10,000 last week. A lot of hospitality there, a lot of food and drink. Obviously, the COVID restrictions now in the table service, it could be reduced to even 4,000, writes Brian O'Connor. So that's what's in the papers today. Tramore is off today, rescheduled for Thursday because of Storm Barra. And the John Costello report, I was just going through it between 8 and half 8 there. Some of the interesting things in it. On the football revamp, there was no real position outlined from Dublin here on the football revamp, only to say that we should respect Ulster and that Dublin are in favour of a change. But what change? And when you think about Dublin winning 16 of the last 17 Leinsters, there was nothing clear about that. No. That was the first thing I noticed.
Which I thought John meant he wanted no change. He certainly didn't want plan B. He didn't come out and say this was a big opportunity missed. Yeah. We needed to drive this through. We're definitely going to be... It was like, well, look, this conversation happened over there. There was lots of debate. These were points raised. This happened. This other thing didn't happen. It was not a priority for him, or it seemed for the Dublin clubs to change things.
Well, one of the interesting points, I do agree with this point. Several clubs and related correspondence, the Dublin County Board at the time of our survey favoured another debate in the previous Congress decision to bring forward the All-Ireland final to July, given the loss of marketing, especially in schools around the All-Ireland time. Suffice to say, the campaign for change hasn't gone away. I actually agree with that. I think it's a mistake by the GAA. I know they got to have the club season. The split season has been a really good idea, and that does give a certainty to the club area, but I do think that the intercounty is the show, and I think finishing in July and having 6 months with no intercounty of any meaningful consequence, I don't think is a positive for the association from a profile point of view.
I guess we'll see. I'd like to kind of just see this play out for a couple of years before we actually can make a decision. I really, to be honest with you, I really liked the COVID year, the first COVID year of the club first and then the county, but that was summer football and the club was all brilliant stuff, and I just like the idea of people being in the shop window for their county manager and those games being on TV, and it sort of kind of ratchets up, almost like a World Cup at the end of a club season where you become familiar with the players and then you see them transfer that form for their country. It's not practicable, I don't think, because you would essentially be giving away the first few months of the year and there'd be no spring football. But I don't know, we'll see how this plays out next year, and actually getting a normal year where the GAA can try out one of these new seasons would be a good thing, because it does feel that a lot of things were just thrown into disarray over the past couple of seasons for obvious reasons. One
of the positives I do think of having a truncated season is that you do get these week-to-week matches from week to week, and All-Ireland semi-finals on a weekend, and there's a bonanza around that, so I kind of do understand the appeal of that. On the COVID breach, he got snippy here, John Costello. There's not any attempt to defend the indefensible about the Inish Falls breach and obviously all the statements that they put out at the time banning Desi Farrell for 12 weeks. But the tone at times was one of, these lads should be arraigned for treason, and that they were guilty of burgling the bank of youth from the young citizens of the country. I have no idea what that means. For almost 2 weeks, some media organisations turned over every stone to see if they could squeeze yet more mileage out of the story. Was the same attitude applied to other teams who were also in breach? Or a team from a different sporting code who broke restrictions to go outside the jurisdiction for social events? And that's even before mentioning any political socials. Most certainly not would the Hawks against the Dubs be an aphorism for the time. Once again, I've no idea what the Hawks against the Dubs means.
It means the people who are taking photographs of the training in Inish Falls, I presume, is it?
The Hawks versus Dubs, is that it?
The Hawks against the Dubs? Maybe the Hacks against the Dubs.
It doesn't. But it wasn't so. It was one of the League of Ireland teams went to Newry or Belfast on a piss-up.
That's right, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Normally it's the rugby lads that they get given out about in these, as opposed to the League of Ireland. Obviously, League of Ireland beginning to encroach into the thought pattern of the GAA. The other thing, obviously, that he talked about
4 points.
John
Conlon,
yeah. That's that's supposed to come before Congress this year.
Yeah.
The proposal to stop Dublin's funding.
Yeah.
He has that line about you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts.
Yeah, this got buried in facts, this one. Parnell Park is sufficient for local games. Croke Park is rented for games played in the National League. We use the league to promote Gaelic games in the capital, encourage juvenile and family groups to attend, which is not possible due to the reduced capacity at Parnell Park. The reality is the county board and clubs have, in the period since 2009, spent a total of 22.6 million on coaching and games development from their own resources. He went through all of the the profit and loss for Dublin for the last 11 years. So that kind of got bogged down in stats, that one. The more interesting one for me was the 4 points for the hurling and football for goals, which was interesting. Talking about Limerick here, even if you exclude their goal tallies, they averaged over 28 points per senior hurling contest in 2020 and 27 points in the summer just gone. Would encourage more teams to gamble if they knew it was worth, say, 4 points. And that's precisely what goals inject into hurling point fest and equally a game of football. The aim is simple, primarily to encourage attacking play and then perhaps, as a byproduct, to increase entertainment levels.
What do you think?
I think hurling's got a problem. I think the hurling issue is more around the ball and the boss. And hurling has become a game of precision, and Jared and myself were the same row in the hurling final. I preferred hurling when it was chaotic. I preferred hurling when it was the ball going into the air and there was a chaos to it, a beautiful chaos. It was much more physical, say, in the 90s, for example. Probably a less technically skillful game. But I do feel like these points from 100 yards out and these frees do make it a bit of a back and forth. Whether the goal is the answer to that, and also like increasing the number of points for a goal, what would the impact of that be on cynical fouling?
Yeah, and defending. Like all of a sudden, you're not giving up any goal chances because you put an extra defender back. Hasten softly when it comes to rule changes in the face of a dominant team. I'm surprised that Dublin, who complained about every rule change being designed to stop them over the last 7 years in particular, are suggesting rule changes to try and stop the Limerick hurlers. I think that hurling will eventually produce an opponent worthy of Limerick, and it will reach a new level.
Everything is cyclical, and like the style of play will probably change. Nobody thought Kilkenny would ever be beaten. Limerick, I'd say, in the middle of their cycle. But that will change, absolutely. The all-conquering Limerick hurlers are obvious trailblazers when it comes to outrageous point tallies. Be clear, it's not meant in any way as a slight on them, as they're a marvellous team. But the 4 points. The thing about the John Costello report is John Costello doesn't do media, doesn't do press conferences. So this annual report comes out. It'd be great if he had a press conference. Like Kevin O'Donovan was on the show yesterday and had a back and forth. I'd love to hear John Costello on OTB AM or any of the PM shows or News Talk of the weekend having a chat about these kind of things and expanding upon his views and his reasons for why he advocates what he does in his annual report,
It's absolutely essential reading every year, though. John, great stuff.
All right, lads.
This morning.
Cheers.
Right, we are turning our attention now to the Champions League, a massive couple of nights, particularly tomorrow night for Barcelona, which we'll get into in just a moment. Graham Hunter is with us on the line. Graham, good morning to you.
Hi there.
Before we get into that, I just wanted to touch back on the weekend's La Liga. According to Marca, the best day for Real Madrid in 79 years, that they win and Atletico lose and Barca lose all on the same day. You've got Benzema getting taken off, Jovic coming on, and all of a sudden there's a new era, a new number 9 in town, and Real Madrid are going to run away with this title.
It was a fantastic, it might be a little bit of hyperbole from a newspaper, which I really now admire the way that it's edited, the way in which they consistently choose the right journalistic line, not the Florentino Perez line. And yeah, listen, if anybody watched the game, it's a startlingly good match. Up at Anoeta, where Real Sociedad, the hipsters team this season, and also a very attractive team to watch, full of talent, full of youth, full of homebred players, was really taught a lesson by Real Madrid. Madrid are in form. They've had this little run of... Everybody here in Spain likes to make analogies with the Tour de France, and Tourmalet is one of these brutal King of the Mountains climbs that you've got to go through, you've got to sweat through in order to win the Tour de France. And this has been Real Madrid's little Tourmalet, because by anybody's standards, to play Seville, Athletic Bilbao, La Real, Inter tonight, and then Atleti this weekend in the Madrid derby. That's a little footballing Tourmalet. And so far, Madrid have been pretty much faultless. They've won all their games. They haven't looked gigantically at threat. They've been defending a lot better, particularly Alaba, Militao, Courtois. And Vinicius is absolutely sublime. There isn't a better footballer to watch in La Liga. There might not be a better footballer to watch in most of the big leagues around Europe. There are more established players, maybe players who are outscoring him. But Vinicius' joy in finding that his brain and his feet not only connect, but they're great friends. His technique, superb. His choice of what to do with the ball, superb. The thrill of seeing somebody making decisions and beating players at that speed, again, is something that we don't see a lot anymore. He's a mixture of the modern footballer who has to be tracking back and working and tackling, which he does with energy and appetite, but also the old style guy who's got the ball at his feet and he's going to torment the next 2-3 guys wearing different coloured shirts that are in his way. His connection with Jovic when Benzema went off was absolutely sublime, and they conspired to make a really, really good goal for Vinicius. So, yeah, it was a decent weekend, particularly given that Barcelona lost at home to Betis in a brilliantly constructed breakaway. Pellegrini fans at West Ham and Manchester City who thought they did or didn't see the best of him. The way he's constructed Betis, again, is a really attractive proposition. When you watch them, they don't have multi-million-pound players that would make other teams jealous. But he's got them playing with complete conviction, attacking intent. They picked Barcelona off absolutely brilliant. And as far as Mallorca is concerned, well, them winning at Atleti was a very good way to celebrate the new big interview with one of their directors, Graham Lasso. So you can get it in wherever you get your podcasts. Come and listen to me and Graham Lasso talking just after Mallorca went to Atleti beat the champions 2-1 with a goal from Taki Kubo, which was beaut.
This is probably putting you on the spot a little bit, but give us Graham Lasso's football philosophy in his new role.
Well, the first thing that he's doing is he's trying to, because it's American owned, and there are some involvement from the Nadals, some involvement from stars of NBA in the States. Steve Nash is one of them. Stuart Holden, who was brought up in Aberdeen, but starred for Bolton and the US men's team in soccer. There's a conglomerate of owners who try to make Mallorca a firm proposition in La Liga, keep them up, make them build, do a Villarreal if you want. And Graham is helping them in terms of consultancy of which type of manager should they be hiring, which type of football should they be playing. He's been helping them in terms of seeking out the right types of footballers. He's given consultancy tasks, and he's the real football brain amongst a consortium that adds know-how, knowledge, contact. And he's very, very attached to the club too. And when you speak to him about the way in which he feels he can contribute, he's also been asked to do SWOT analysis on past and current employees. One of them suffered badly from the SWOT analysis that Graham did, and is now head of the PFA in England. And Mallorca don't miss him one little bit.
Let's get stuck into the football over the next couple of nights then, Graham. Tomorrow night, I think, really, is just this unbelievably attractive fixture between Bayern and Barcelona, a huge degree of pressure on Barcelona. And already you can see pieces being written comparing this Barcelona team to the last Barcelona team to get to crash out in the group stages. So is there this general expectancy that they're really up against it tomorrow night and actually Benfica may actually leapfrog them once again into second place?
I think, look, generally for anybody who's watched the last few months, anybody who was at Camp Nou at the weekend, yes, is the answer. Not from Xavi or from the players. I think there's a general belief that with a slightly altered Bayern, I would expect Bayern to win. They should be good enough to win. It's a shock if they don't. But it won't be their top 11. We know that because of some absences, some degree of... Listen, any Bayern team for my taste that doesn't have Kimmich in it is a lesser team. Doesn't have to bring Barcelona into the argument. Well, I think it'll be pretty miraculous if they do. No crowd, again, which is for reasons that we all have to suffer and put up with. Does that help Barcelona a little bit? I think it probably does. There are certain players who need a crowd baying at them, and Luis Suarez would always prefer to play in a stadium where everybody's getting at him and inspiring him, and he'll use that. 18-year-old kids aren't always like that, and this team is peppered with 18-year-old kids. So there are other minor things that bring, the two teams a little bit closer. Yes, there are. And does Xavi genuinely believe that they can go and win with Dembele probably starting for the first time in many weeks? It may actually be the second start this season. I don't think he's played a complete game since the summer and the Euros, but he looks fit. He came on at the weekend again against Betis and made a difference. Could easily have scored 2 or 3 times. Will Bayern be able to thwart that threat? You'd have thought quite possibly. But Dembele makes a difference in this team. Gavi, who took a bang on the head at the weekend and went to hospital, was immediately given the clearance to be part of the squad and can travel. Again, that makes a difference. How Xavi chooses to play at the back, I think, is a really big issue. Araujo, the Uruguayan defender, has become absolutely essential. How to decorate around that is a key thing. And there's a chance for Marc-Andre ter Stegen, who doesn't get on particularly well with Manuel Neuer, admires him, never slags him off, but they are two completely different personalities. Ter Stegen famously has believed for some years that he should be able to take Neuer's position as the number one in the German Mannschaft. Most coaches disagree. Stegen gets his games intermittently. Massive opportunity for him to show. Huge opportunity for Marc-Andre ter Stegen to go and produce a big game, whatever Neuer does. So there's a lot riding on it. And if Barcelona win, they're automatically through. And if Benfica match Barcelona's result, Benfica goes down into the Europa League after having pumped Barcelona in Lisbon. So it's a really good soap opera story.
Can I posit a ridiculous idea, Graham? Eric Dyer did a really interesting interview at the weekend where he talked about Pochettino and the time when they were peaking, and he debunked the commonly held view that actually their best team and the team that should have won the league was the team that got beaten by Leicester. Was actually the next season when Chelsea won the league and Antonio Conte came in. His case was that Chelsea weren't playing European football that year, and so therefore they had one sole focus, and that focus was restoring a title-winning team. And Spurs didn't quite have the squad to deal with the challenge on multiple fronts. Is there a world in which the best thing for Xavi is no European football next season?
No, I absolutely understand your premise. I've seen that happen across my reporting career. I've seen exactly what you're describing Dyer as arguing function. I agree it's a proposition that can work. But Xavi's need to restock quickly, given that it's established that there are 4 or 5 utterly exceptional players now between 17 and 19-year-old. There is absolutely no question that they have to buy a goal scorer. It's imperative, probably in January, in order to bring to fruition some of the good work we're seeing on the pitch, and we are. Barcelona can play. There's no question that they can play. Are they a little bit ragged? Are they positionally unsound? And do they absolutely fail to take goal chances? All of those 3 things are yes. And Joe, when you're 1.4 billion in debt, which Dyer and Spurs weren't then, you have to earn European money. It's a massive degradation of what you can draw in if you go down to the Europa League, or if you only qualify to play in the Europa League, which is what you're talking about. You're not just talking about this current season in Europe. You're talking about qualifying for Europe in the league, where at the moment, they're several points behind Rayo Vallecano. And at the moment, they're not playing or looking like they'll qualify in the top 4. But if they go down to the Europa League and in January they can add a little bit of goal power, it's far from beyond the bounds of possibilities that they win the Europa League and get that Champions League pot. Not guaranteed, absolutely not, but possible. And Spain for the second season in a row of 5 teams in the Champions League. But the revenue Barcelona need to cope with their debt, to repay people that they promised money to, and to invest a little bit in the team is imperative, Jaron. And a key thing is, given that Barcelona and Real Madrid have already, from the group stage, lads, from the group stage, they've already taken in about 70 million euros. There'll be a couple of million euros here or there each between them. But if that's the way this competition is constructed, you have to be in it. So I take your Dyer point, but it doesn't apply to this version of Barcelona.
Okay, fair enough. The goal scorer you're talking about, the papers have helpfully linked Mo Salah to Barcelona today, and I made the comparison with Uncle June in The Sopranos and his desire to be with Angie Dickinson, very unlikely to happen.
Listen. Everybody's felt that desire once in their life.
What's going on? Why is this even a story? Why are people printing it? Surely it's the most ludicrous thing. It's the season of Christmas and miracles happen. Is that what's going on?
No, it's really obvious that Salah, who's in maybe the best form, some of the best form that he's shown since being at Liverpool, and is genuinely an exceptional athlete, footballer, scorer, and now leader. I think his position and his profile within the squad has grown, has changed, has added a dimension, is a better way to say it. For months now, he's been giving interviews whereby my future's not in my hands, and yeah, maybe Spain, why not? He even gave one in Manchester, travelled across to a hotel near Manchester to Diario AS about 4 months ago, where the whole point, speaking to a Spanish newspaper, which he didn't need to do. Superstars' time is tight. You pick and choose. You know, let's never think that an interview with a world top footballer with a particular medium from another country isn't hugely crafted and strategic. So these little drip, well, maybe, who knows? I saw Salah's words where I saw Xavi's interest in me. Xavi's never spoken about Salah. Barcelona cannot even contemplate doing that deal, even with the influx of money which is being argued over between the deal that the CBC deal that the head of La Liga is bringing to the clubs, and a separate deal which Real Madrid Athletic Club and Barcelona have set up to try and tempt the clubs not to take the La Liga money. However that money goes, that Salah idea is a non-starter at his age. What would he be, never mind the money, what would he be thinking of going and spending time playing for Barcelona while they're in the midst of a massive rebuilding, and one which has got huge amounts to move before there's even clarity of vision and a building of the super team. So can we just put that one aside as Mo Salah digging Liverpool out, saying, get my contract done and get it done the way I want?
But you're saying, not that in relation to Salah at all here, but you're saying there's a chance that Barcelona have some sort of cash to work with over the next couple of windows, from what you're saying there?
They want Cavani. Right. They're very, very keen to have Cavani in January. Now, whether that can be feasible or not, I don't know. There are a couple of other footballers that they're watching really, really closely. They think maybe that they can draw down more borrowed money in the midterm. Although Xavi feverishly denied it, from my taste at least, in a business sense, Frankie de Jong is still extremely young in football terms. He's very, very talented. His development at Barcelona has stalled. It's early in his relationship with Xavi to see if Xavi can actually teach him and develop him the way that I believe Xavi will do with a host of players at Camp Nou. And yet there are clubs who come in and buy him and pay decent money for him. And that's a deal. That's not one of the areas where Barcelona are least well equipped in midfield. It's feasible that a good deal for de Jong could liberate money. I pray for Kun Agüero's sake that he finds a way to come back and be guaranteed that it's safe to play again. If he doesn't, and he gives up on his career, or the contract is torn up with Barcelona, which I hope doesn't happen, then just a simple actuarial fact is that liberates a lot of salary, which takes the financial fair play in Spain litmus test down a little bit for Barcelona. There are small ways in which they can beg, steal or borrow a striker, and many strikers. Let's say in Cavani's position, would you rather sitting on the bench at Manchester United, or would you rather be playing 3.5 games out of 6 for Football Club Barcelona? I think at his age, that's a pretty easy choice to make, I think. So that's one of the things to look out for in this winter market. But the winter market is full of sharks, full of muscular clubs, and Barcelona have proven to be neither of those so far. So we'll see.
So the plan isn't necessarily to trust youth out and out. There is a sense that they need a bit of a blend in the squad, that they need an Edinson Cavani type figure.
Ansu Fati is a phenomenon. He is a brilliant footballer, just as Pedri, Gavi, Nico will go on to prove to be not just little young teenage tyros. They're special players. We'll be talking about these guys in 8, 9, 10 years' time, still, because they're that good. Ansu Fati's meniscus problem, where he had 4 operations when one should have done. He was out for a year when he should really have been out for maximum 3 months. And when he's come back, the length of injury that he had has meant that he's been plagued by muscular problems. He's their one striker. Depay is a fraud. Depay is massively talented, He's very self-indulgent in what he chooses to do. He isn't a very good team player. He goes to sleep, he gets disheartened. Dubai is not the way forward for Football Club Barcelona, after which they're really struggling to conjure up a goal. So it isn't simply adding experience, which a team half full of 17 and 18-year-olds does need. It's a very clear task that if they're to develop, get confidence, and you, all of you and your viewers know, when you're playing not bad, but the goals don't go in, the pressure on you is higher, the mistakes come, you lose a goal. If you tuck games away when you're playing moderately well, but you bang 2 goals, then the pressure changes, people play with more confidence, and the whole system regenerates. This isn't just a debate about Barcelona. This has happened right across your working lifetimes at a number of clubs. They cannot continue the way they are, creating lots of chances, but then not killing games off and suffering the problems behind.
The Ansu Fati injury that you mentioned there and the complications around his recovery, is there any connection between that and Xavi coming in and clearing out the medical department or replacing the head of the medical? Xavi clearly wasn't overly an obvious question.
Look, everybody at home is going, no, he didn't like the colour of their uniforms. Look, you're right. And there's a Dr. Pruna who was at the club throughout Xavi's just about his entire reign as maybe the best Spanish footballer ever, left the club in the build-up to the last presidential elections to ally himself with a candidate that wasn't Laporta. He was that important. I mean, you since the Galactico era, you've been used to presidents. You've been reporting on presidents. You're like, well, I've got this culture, I've got this player. This guy, Dr. Pruna, was so important that he's going to be part of a presidential ticket. Now, that presidential candidate lost. Laporta hasn't been quick to forgive people who were on that ticket. But Xavi, and this is an indication of his power, not only cleared out physios, physical recuperators like fitness trainers, and 2 of them senior medical staff, one of whom was the guy that Ansu Fati ran to and embraced when he'd been out for a year, came back, scored a goal barely on the pitch. I think it was against Levante. And that guy who was the focus of everybody's cameras there, John, and Pruna has been brought back. So when the president goes, yeah, Chappie, you can have your favourite doctor, it isn't simply a reflection of how badly things have been going. And Ansu is the tip of the iceberg because they're repetitive muscle injuries, part of which is to do with the way that we squeeze the juice out of our footballers. We absolutely squeeze them until they have nothing left, playing every 3 days, travelling, no sleep, stupid times of games. Barcelona are playing a friendly, the Diego Maradona friendly, somewhere out in the desert in the middle of 2 crucial games in December. It's ludicrous what we do to our footballers. So it's not, in any club, it's not immediately the case you can point at the physio or the doctor or the fitness trainer and say, oh, that's your fault. Nobody's actually saying, well, we're presenting the medical departments and fitness departments with players who have never been more battered mentally and physically in the history of the sport. So, but yes, you're right. There's been an absolute clear out, and Xavi wants it to be a general uprise in the number of games his crucial players play all season, and you would want that, wouldn't you?
Are you going to qualify, Graham?
Dinamo Kiev might do them a favour. I think it's feasible that Dinamo Kiev thwart Benfica. The odds makers will all say that it's Benfica going through and Barcelona going out. But if you're working out which group to be looking at tonight, this is a highly entertaining one. And if you can watch 2 pictures at the same time, there's drama in store. I will admit, Barcelona have never won in Bavaria, so they need Dinamo to do them a wee turn.
Right. Enjoy it, Graham. Thanks a million. Graham Hunter there on the line, live from Spain. It is 9:09 on this Tuesday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM. It is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Let's tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold from 1 o'clock is the life and times of Johnny Kilban. 3 o'clock is the Dadcast. A career retrospective with Darren O'D is coming your way at 4 o'clock. And then OTB Gold features Michael Eoin on Life After Football, 7 o'clock. Then Off the Ball is live. The Snap on OTB, brought to you in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Meanwhile, you can see details for this of the Northwestern Wildcats versus Nebraska Huskers at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, 27th of August 2022 on collegefootballireland.com. And during this break, you'll hear Cian Fahey on the Patriots and the league's elite quarterbacks.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
All that has happened is people have come in here, right, listened to the pod for the last 29 episodes and seen the lifestyle that Paddy Andrews has had. He's wearing a Roddy Collins jacket, he's got his teeth done like Ross from Friends. He is looking he's looking magnificent and he's ready to go. Just for the pod, lads. Just for the pod.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
I would agree with you. I think it's very difficult to pick against them right now, but I'd like to see them up against Lamar in good form or up against Patrick Mahomes in good form.
Well, that's a big question, and that's what makes it interesting, because you've got that rounded team in the Patriots where they've got every position looked after. They've got a great coaching staff. But Lamar and Patrick Mahomes, together, they've both not necessarily played poorly. They haven't played to the peak levels they've played in previous years. But the story has really been about everything around them, because the Chiefs rebuilt their offensive line. It hasn't worked out. Travis Kelce, for some reason, has not been a big factor in games throughout the year, where there's been times where I felt like Mahomes and him have had like personal problems, because Kelce's wide open and Mahomes just doesn't throw him the ball. He goes to someone who's already covered and ignores the obvious option who he always went to before. And Lamar is dealing with everyone being hurt. All of his running backs are gone. Half his offensive line is gone. His wide receivers are in and out of the lineup, and his wide receivers are bad in general. Defensively, they lost a cornerback or two. So those two teams are beat up, and they've got very clear holes that you think a Belichick-type team would be able to take advantage of and go after. So the AFC, and I suppose the other big one we've left out there is Josh Allen and the Bills, and we will get further into that matchup because they're playing each other this week. But I still have a problem trusting him in big games. You've seen him turn up in games where you expect him to win and they blow teams out, and that's fine. But when it comes to a real proper performance and he's under pressure to make plays, he's just not very good, and that's the reality of it. So it really is about the balance and the overall health, and maybe things will continue to change, but hopefully we get the best of the Chiefs, the best of the Ravens, and the best of the Patriots, because then suddenly we get these AFC playoffs where it's fascinating and it's high quality drama and high quality football and all explosive play.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
12 minutes past 9, you're very welcome back to OTB AM. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Now, delighted to say that Keith Barry is with us with thanks to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and 2021 has been a challenging year for the Make-A-Wish charity due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19. Despite the restrictions and the lockdowns, Make-A-Wish is on target to grant 100 wishes this year. However, there are over 200 children on the list waiting for their wish to be granted, and the charity needs the public's help. These children need that sprinkle of festive magic that only Make-A-Wish can provide now more than ever. They need the hope, the strength and the all-important smile that a wish granted can bring, not only for the child but the entire family. And you can make that happen by making a donation at makeawish.ie/donate. Keith Barry, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, very well. I mean, I presume you echo this. I mean, this is a charity that you've been working with and something that means an awful lot to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've been working with Make-A-Wish for a couple of years now as their head of magic for the kids, and I think it's so important, especially at this time of year where there is magic all around us, that we can make some of these kids' wishes come true. You know, I've got kids myself. Over the years, they've had their own issues in and out of hospital. Luckily, they've kind of gotten through their own issues, but there are so many kids out there who are seriously ill, and they need the public support, you know, because unfortunately, some of these kids may not see another Christmas. Other kids may be seriously ill. And I suppose from my perspective, the very least we can do is just, try and help them have a magical Christmas. And that's what this is about. That's what the campaign is about. That's why I'm here. And look, I've put my money where my mouth is. I've donated myself to Make-A-Wish over the past 18 months as well. So I just hope if the public even have a small amount of money that they can donate to help these kids,
What sort of experiences does that give you, being head of magic for a charity like this? Like, is it in a strange way an almost fulfilling thing, or how would you explain what you get out of that yourself?
Yeah, for me, it's much like any of the other charity work that I've done. It really is just to fill my own soul with magic. Any charity work like this that I do, especially for Make-A-Wish, I just do it for that sole reason. And there is no other reason, I suppose, really. It's, for me as a magician, my job is to bring adults back into that world where anything and everything can happen, and bring adults back into that childlike sense of wonder when I'm doing a theatrical performance. But I think sometimes we forget that, kids in general have their own problems sometimes. And I'm not just talking about just, health problems, just mental problems and things like that. And I think it can just be so difficult, especially for, seriously ill kids, to have fun in their lives again, and their parents, obviously doing everything that they can, to make these every day, I suppose, for these children a magical day. But I think these kids have wishes. They have wishes that they want granted, and some of these wishes can cost a small amount of money. Other wishes might cost quite a considerable amount of money, and the only way that these wishes can be facilitated is with the public support.
For sure. One of the interesting crossovers this morning, Keith, is between you and the world of sport. And I think there's still a lot of people out there who aren't quite aware of the amount of work that you've done with sports people. So when did this start from your perspective, actually getting involved in elite sport?
Yeah, so I've been a mind coach, a hypnotherapist, and an executive coach for, believe it or not, close to 20 years now. But I've just always done it very quietly behind the scenes. And I've worked a lot with athletes, specifically, I would say, in the past kind of 12 years or so. So look, I've been in and out of the IRFU camp quite a number of times. And I've worked with a lot of players actually over the years. And in my world, confidentiality is key. So, a lot of these players just, for whatever reason, they may not want the public to know that they're working with me. But some players have come out and talked about the work that I've done with them. So obviously Keith Earls has spoken recently about the work that I've done with him. Rory Best, I worked with Rory quite a bit in the kind of last 2 years of his career. And then aside from them, I've worked with golfers, tennis players, soccer players, a whole gamut really of elite athletes. And my job, my function, my role is to teach them how to hack their subconscious brains and help them achieve peak performance,
The obvious question then is, how do you do that? But I presume that just opens a Pandora's box of potential talking points. Could we then just focus in on say Keith Earls, for example, because he's been really open with his experiences. His book is an absolutely phenomenal read, and as have all the interviews he's done. They've all been brilliant to listen to. So what sort of work did you do specifically with Keith Earls throughout his career?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got a Keith's book next to my bed at the moment, so I'm reading it myself. Of course, I did skip to the chapter where I knew he probably talked about me. So there's about three or four pages where he talks about the work that I did with him, And I suppose when I started working with Keith, really, I always start with the one question that I need to start with everybody. I'm like, okay, so why is it that you're playing rugby? Just what's the specific why? And I always eliminate the obvious answer, which is I just have a passion for the sport. But you have to really, I suppose, dig deep and get people to put deep, meaningful thought into their own purpose, into their why. Because once you know your why, then the pathway to success and the hacking of the subconscious mind is the easier part. The hard part is trying to get people to figure out what their why is. And Keith had a number of different whys, which was great. It took us a while to get those out of him. But one of his purposes at that moment in time was not only to start playing better, because believe it or not, there was a moment in time when he just wasn't playing great. He'll openly admit that, and some people forget that. So he wanted to play better, but then more importantly, he wanted to win Player of the Year. So that's what we really zoned in on. And then with Keith, my job again is to allow him to hack his own subconscious brain. So I'm the facilitator, if you like. I never take credit for this stuff. For me, I am, I suppose, adept at the subconscious mind. I always avoid the word expert, but I know a lot about the subconscious mind. And the problem is most people don't. And that's where your anxieties lie. That's where your stresses lie. But it's also where, we've got 86 billion neurons in our brain, and we're constantly creating new neural pathways every single day. And that comes from what you focus upon. So on a subconscious level, I had to get him to focus upon, like I know he's spoken about this himself, moments in matches where perhaps in the past he might drop a ball, miss a tackle, whatever it was, and that would really adversely affect the rest of his game on the pitch in that moment, from that one missed tackle or one drop ball. So my job was actually to help him, like this is one of my jobs, we did a lot more as well, but just to give you an example, was the moment he dropped the ball or to our mid-miss tackle, was to reset subconsciously in the moment and actually use that as inspiration to play better for the rest of the match. And it worked. A year later, he won Players Player of the Year. I remember a couple of years ago, I worked with a bodybuilder, Hugh Donovan was his name. And he came into me and he'd about 5 weeks left to the NABA All-Ireland Bodybuilding Championships. And he'd never won it or anything. So I worked with him, and within 4 or 5 weeks, he got into such a physical shape and mental shape that not only did he win his category, he won the whole thing outright. And then I've had, elite athletes that have actually been disqualified from races because they were racing too fast, which I didn't even know was a thing, by the way. If I'd known that, I could have preempted it. But it turns out you probably know more about this stuff than I. But it was in a cycling race, and he got within, a wheel or 2 wheels of the racer in front of him, and he was sin-binned for, 5 or 10 minutes or something. But that was a big problem, because then he ended up not qualifying, But if I'd known that, I could preempt it, because I'm a big fan of preempting obstacles. I think our government could do a little bit of that at this moment of time,
Can I just ask you, is what you're doing with the sports people the diametric opposite of what you do with people in the audience, where you're trying to get them to, the audience, you want them to immediately change their neural pathways. You're trying to create new neural pathways so they believe that they're experiencing something which they're not. Whereas with the sports people, what you're doing is you might be experiencing this thing and you need to stop experiencing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, for me, they're complete polar opposites. I think sometimes people get confused by my brand, and I'm very clear on what my brand is. Like, I have 2 different brands. So brand A is the entertainer, the person on stage who loves to just have fun with an audience, transform them into a childlike sense of wonder. When I bring people on stage, sometimes if I hypnotize them, they'll do things they wouldn't ordinarily do. But there's a lot to that. So that type of hypnosis, it involves the peer pressure of the audience. It involves people on stage willingly wanting to behave in a certain way and all that kind of funky stuff. But then the polar opposite of that is the mind coach, the executive coach, where I'm very serious about what I do. And in that role, I have to really actually genuinely hack deep into the subconscious mind. And, autogenics is a thing that I'm a big fan of, which is basically where, as I mentioned, I see myself as the facilitator and really allowing people. Autogenics is basically the idea or concept that people are capable of hacking their own subconscious minds. But in that role, I'm actually trying to create sustainable, permanent change. And that's the major difference that I see between the 2 different brands. And I love doing both. I don't think I'll ever choose one over the other, to be honest. I think I'll always do both. Like right now, if I look at the kind of the executive coaching and the work that I do with athletes, is pretty much split 50-50. So I do a lot with business people as well, but really high-performing business people. But with them, like, for example, I could be working with them one day, teaching them how to read people's micro-expressions and body language, and how to find out if somebody's lying to them or not. And then a couple of hours later, I could be helping a golfer on a swing or her swing,
It's a bit wild. You mentioned there the government. As a performer, as somebody who, when you're not doing the coaching stuff, what has the last 18 months actually been like for you?
Yeah, look, it's been terrible, really, for everybody, for every performer, because I don't think that the government truly understand that it's in our DNA to be on a stage, especially the junkie road rats, as I would call us. Like, there's a lot of us around that have been around for 20 years plus. So I think if I was starting out, it would be difficult, but it wouldn't be as difficult as if right now there's hundreds, if not thousands, of performers all around Ireland who've been on the road for 20 years. We don't know anything else. and it's in our DNA to be on a stage, and we need to be on a stage. It's not about money. We need to be on a stage. Like, I've been on a stage since I'm 14, pretty much every single week since I'm 14 in some capacity. So to have not been on a stage for whatever it is, 20 months now, it can be very detrimental to your mental health. Now, with that being said, I've got a lot of tools, techniques, and strategies to make sure that I'm okay. But I look at, other bands, other musicians, and I can see the way it's really adversely affecting their mindset and their behavior. So look, it's just terrible. And for me, look, I'm very careful not to overly criticize people sometimes, but I'll go back to it. I always preempt obstacles. So I'm somewhat bewildered about how the government can come out and say, well, we don't know what's around the corner with this whole pandemic. It keeps giving us twists and turns and all the rest of it. And I'm looking at that going, well, I can tell you, but I don't need to be a mentalist to tell you. Anybody on the street can tell you what's coming around the corner. Preempt that there's going to be another strain of this. Preempt that there could be another pandemic on top of this one. And if you preempt and plan for that, then ultimately you'll be prepared instead of putting us into continuous cycles of semi-lockdowns, opening theatres, closing theatres, and all that kind of stuff. And then, once you have those obstacles preempted, then you can plan strategies for them. Like I saw last night that, Micheál Martin mentioned something like that. He doesn't want theatres to be closed and he's going to look at some kind of subsidy. It's too late. Like, everybody around Ireland has already changed their dates and they're looking for dates and venues, and venues are booked out for 2 years. So if you're trying to shift a gig or a tour or whatever it is, you might not be able to because venues are just not available right now. So it's a lot more complex than I think people understand. It's a lot more complex, certainly, than the government is making it out to be as well,
You mentioned the struggles that people have gone through over the last little while. Is there any techniques that you've gone to yourself personally more than any others over the course of the last 2 years?
Yeah, well, I put all of these different techniques and strategies into a book, actually. So the book is out just 3 weeks now. It's called Brain Hacks. And in the book, I've packed the book with brain hacks in order to effectively change your subconscious mind. So, in the book, though, the number one thing that I always come back to is creative visualization. So that's something that I do on a daily basis myself, where over the corner of the room over here, I've got a chair. I sit down, I stick a blindfold on, I put what's called binaural beats on, so people can just find that on YouTube, just stick in binaural beats. Basically, that allows you to enter into an alpha brainwave state, which is the sweet spot that you need to be in order to effectively, creatively visualize. So if people want to know about this stuff, it's very simple. You just take 15 minutes out of your day, commit that 15 minutes, though. You got to do it every single day. It's like riding a bicycle. You got to learn how to do it. There's no magic wand with this stuff. You're not going to have an effective change just instantly. But if you do it daily, you'll slowly start to see some amazing changes over time. So you take 5 minutes to relax your physical body. Now, I generally do that by visualizing a purple light entering into my feet and then up through my ankles and my shins. And you visualize that purple light going into every spot in your body. And then after that, the next 5 minutes, I practice my own breathing technique, which is quite simple. It's just the 6-3-6 technique. So you inhale for 6 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, exhale for 6. Inhale for 6. Hold for 3, exhale for 6. And by doing that, you'll start to slowly enter into that alpha brainwave state. You're slowing down your autonomic nervous system. You're slowing down your limbic system. And then you visualize yourself just in the cinema or movie theater and visualize a giant screen in front of you. And that's where you future project your goals, your dreams, your targets, whatever it is that you want to effectively change during that moment in time. So what will happen here is, when you're finished that session, that 15-minute session, when you're going about your day, your subconscious mind will be working in overdrive behind the scenes in order to achieve that goal, that dream, or that target. Now, of course, that can only happen with effective actions. So I'm very clear about that. So you've got to take the actions necessary in order to achieve that goal, that dream, or that target. But the good news is, by doing that visualization, it'll make the actions necessary all the much easier to do. So that moment when you wake up out of bed on a stormy day like today and you think you're going to skip the gym, just naturally you'll actually go to the gym or do whatever it is that you need to do, because your subconscious mind is constantly working in overdrive in order to motivate you. And I always say to people, if you want to try this, do it for 21 days, because that is, scientifically speaking, how long it takes to attain a habit. If you do that for 21 days, you will see effective change in your life. Like, you can't not see it if you do it correctly. So that'd be my number one top for people, is just to put aside 15 minutes out of every day to creatively visualize,
Right. Can I ask you, when you're tapping into the subconscious mind, and of sports people in particular, are there any common themes after they do techniques like the one you just illustrated, for example, that tend to come to fruition? Is there a commonality between all these elite sports people that you tend to find?
Well, weirdly enough, the one commonality that I found is they all have the imposter syndrome. So if you talk to these people behind the scenes and you're just talking one-to-one with them, they all suffer from confidence issues. So they all feel like that they're an imposter in the position that they're in, and that, at any given moment in time that they might be caught out. So it's fascinating to me that all these elite athletes, the majority of them certainly, that they suffer from the imposter syndrome. And I think if you think about it, most people suffer from the imposter syndrome at some moment in their life. So you may not suffer from it daily, but it comes in and out of your life. But I find that elite sports people, they suffer with the imposter syndrome more than most. And then I suppose secondary to that, I'm quite surprised really at, not just any one person, but nearly all of the elite sports people that I've dealt with, until they've come to me, they actually haven't really studied the subconscious brain at all, which is really fascinating to me because, if you think about it, when you're in a high-performing environment, most of the decisions that you make, either on a pitch, on a field, in a swimming pool, wherever it might be, they're subconscious decisions because they happen so quickly. They're not consciously aware of what they're doing. So therefore, if they are subconscious decisions, which they are, then surely they should have learned at some stage over their career about the subconscious brain. And I think that just comes back to their training habits and whoever their coaches are. And I think coaches, especially in the modern day, certainly need to go to sports psychologists, whether it's somebody like me who's a motivational coach and a mindset coach. They need to really get a grasping and an understanding of the subconscious brain. And any teams that I see, even on soccer or just watching that I'm not necessarily involved with, hurling, it's fascinating to me that when I'm looking at a team or whatever, that I can already tell, oh my God, they know nothing about the mind. And if they're losing or on a losing streak, I always look at the way that the coach or the captain speaks after the game. And I'm very fascinated by all of that, even the body language of the captain or the coach after a loss,
What are you looking for in those moments?
Well, I'm looking at thousands of different things, but I'm looking at, for example, micro expressions. I'm looking for one-sided shoulder shrugs. I'm looking for asymmetrical lip movements. I'm looking at the carotid artery in the neck. I'm looking at body language. So to give you an example, like an asymmetrical shoulder shrug when somebody is talking means that they don't inherit. And now, look, I'll presuppose this by saying you have to have a baseline to go by. So what I mean by that is I need to understand what that person normally looks, acts, and speaks like in advance. So I'll have to have some kind of a baseline of this person on a normal day where I know what they normally would talk about and look like and all the rest of it when they're just on during a very comfortable day. So I need to know the baseline first. But then after that, I'm looking for changes in their physiology when they're talking about a specific point. So if I see a change in their physiology that they don't ordinarily have, for example, a one-sided shoulder shrug. Now I'm doing it there, but you can't see it because you're untrained and have to see it. But if I exaggerated, that's what it looks like. But it isn't that. It isn't what I'm doing now. I'm exaggerating that. It's literally that. I'm doing it now, right? And they're very hard to see because you can see how small that movement is in my shoulder. But when I see that, I know that the fight or flight mechanism has kicked into that person. And I know that they probably don't believe what it is that they're saying. So if they say, for example, the team did their very best on the day and I see a one-sided shoulder shrug, I know that the coach, the captain, whoever it is that's talking at that moment of time, they don't believe that. They don't actually believe that their team did their best on the day. If I see a one-sided shoulder shrug, when I hear a coach saying, well, on our good day, there's a chance that we might be able to beat the other team, wherever the other team might be, and I see a one-sided shoulder shrug or an asymmetrical lip movement, I know that the person actually doesn't probably believe in what they're saying. I also look for nose touches a lot because when somebody's lying or when their body's under stress, the nose has thousands of blood vessels at the end of it, so the nose engorges with blood, and people will get a subconscious tic there, and they'll just touch their nose more often than they would. So when I see that, then I know that the person, for some reason, is under stress, and they're most likely lying to me. You know, so these are all the different indicators that I'm looking for, but there's thousands of them. They're just kind of 3 off the top of my head, you know.
I'm going to watch the post-match press conferences in the Champions League tonight in a completely different way after that, Keith.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I love studying that. Like, in the world I'm in, I more study politicians because, like that, you know, that has a direct effect on my own livelihood. But you can do it with coaches as well and with sports people. Like, I'm really fascinated how bad actually a lot of the soccer managers are at their own body language post-match. I can't believe that they haven't trained themselves like robots in it. Like, and I mean, they should be robotic afterwards. They should enter into this mindset of a winning mindset. Like, do you think Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps ever entered a swimming pool or went on a track thinking that they might win or that maybe their next performance might get? No, there was no they were definitive in their mindset. And, you know, it's fascinating to me when you see the body language, the shoulders, all the different indicators to me that says one thing: loser. And that will just resonate through a team. It's infectious, that losing mindset, that negative mindset. My God, it's so negative, a lot of these guys. So they could do well, I think, to study and strategize with somebody like myself or another body language expert in order to understand how effective or how detrimental their own body language can be in that environment, you know?
We need to get you back on, Keith, and go through like classic press conferences and interviews. And
oh yeah,
you know, like what you're saying there. For whatever reason, in my head, I'm like thinking I would love to hear you analyse Rory McIlroy's body language after, because he's so honest.
Yeah.
And he's so after, it would be just a fascinating study. I should remind everybody watching this morning as well that Keith is with us because 2021 has been a pretty challenging year for the Make-A-Wish charity due to the ongoing impact of the coronavirus. Despite the restrictions and the lockdowns, Make-A-Wish is on target to grant 100 wishes this year. However, there are over 200 children on the list waiting for their wish to be granted, and the charity needs the public's help. These children need that sprinkle of festive magic that only Make-A-Wish can provide now more than ever. They need the hope, the strength and the all-important smile that a wish granted can bring, not only for the child, but the entire family. And you can make that happen by making a donation. And to do that, you can go to makeawish.ie/donate. Keith Barry, you've been great with your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Keith Barry there on the line, and it's makeawish.ie/donate. Okay, so OTB AM, it is 9:36 by the way, has been brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved
touched your nose, Eoin.
razors. Did I?
You touched your nose.
I'm very everything you said there. I'm like, I do
just
all
as he
this
said,
all the time.
People who touch their nose are lying. You were like, it was involuntary. You kind of reached up and were like, oh
God, yeah. Everything you said there, I'm like, I feel so seen right now. Just look at your toes. Don't let anybody read you. That was pretty interesting. I'm not going to lie. I was trying to think through a few sports people, and it's not actually too difficult to actually visualise what he was talking about there. But we might revisit that in a little while. Tomorrow morning here on OTB AM, we're going to be back with you at 7:30. We'll be reacting to tonight's Champions League, looking ahead to tomorrow's Champions League, and much more besides. Right now, though, we're leaving you with Eddie Jordan talking about an incredible Grand Prix in the Formula One.
Martin, and he is gaining on Max Verstappen. He's going to go for the move here. Lewis Hamilton trying to get into the lead of the race. They go wheel to wheel into the first corner. Verstappen has to bail out. Lewis Hamilton has to bail out. Verstappen ends that sequence with a bigger lead over Lewis Hamilton.
They've gone in side by side. He's gone through down the inside line, and they touch.
Is that Brazil again? Where?
No, I think he was more ahead at that point.
That's crazy, man. Oh, they've touched and they've collided. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. How much damage on Hamilton's Mercedes? What has happened there? Verstappen being told to give the place back to Lewis Hamilton. Slowed down on the straight. Hamilton ran into the back of the Red Bull. Just what is going on here in Jeddah tonight?
Well, we'll try and figure that out. David Croft and Martin Brundle there on Sky last night from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen wheel to wheel and more on several occasions across the race. The net result, Hamilton prevailed, Verstappen second. In the Drivers' Championship, they are now joined at the hip, level on points after 21 of 22 races. The season finale is in Abu Dhabi this coming weekend. To our guest, we did a great feature interview with him in the distant past, the early months of the pandemic. I think he was in Cape Town at the time. That interview is still very much on YouTube and podcast. Got a great reaction, so you can check it out if you want. On this occasion, well, the focus on more immediate concerns as the season reaches its crescendo. Eddie Jordan, good evening. Great to have you on again.
Yeah, great. Fantastic race yesterday for everybody, but I'm sure we're going to talk about the implications of it.
Yes, and there are many. I think the last time we were on, we got into conversations about your belief in God. It's not going to be as philosophical this time around.
I had no idea what was going on. I think God may have to take a second place here. I can't even remember what we were talking about, but that just goes to show that the future rolls on very quickly, and we've seen how this championship has evolved. And to think, I think it's 40, 50 years ago since the two main protagonists went into the very last race of the season, joined at exactly the same number of points. And it's unprecedented. It's fantastic for everybody because there's been an upsurge in the interest of motorsport. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure this fight between the two drivers is certainly one of those things. And I think Netflix and other things in the media like you guys and what we're doing here on the media, people are crying out for more and more information.
Well, I think a perfect storm. I think Netflix drew a lot of people to the sport, and then it just so happens the sport delivers one of the great championships right on cue.
Well, you say that, and you have, without question, Lewis, who got knighted earlier this year for a 7-time winner of the World Championship, and rightly so, in my opinion. Max Verstappen, who is the young kid. I remember him as a baby in a pram when his father drove for me. And so I know both sides of this little fight very, very well. I'm trying to be totally unbiased if I can, because I want to see the best man win. And I think that there's going to be a titanic battle next weekend. Abu Dhabi doesn't realise what's in front of them, because there will be a clamour of people that get on planes going to see that race. And I hope they're ready for it.
We'll get into some of the specifics from last night. There are too many specifics, I think, for us to cover all of them. But if I was to put a big picture takeaway, which lots of seasoned observers have said, it's that Verstappen is crossing a line. For instance, Martin Brundle last night on the commentary, Verstappen's got to think about his driving standards. He crossed a line, reckless, too aggressive. Others have said as much. Where are you on Verstappen and his behaviour on the track, Eddie?
I did hear Martin say that. Look, we have to understand that this is, and I'm trying to be unbiased, but remember, you were listening to a British broadcast. And I'm not saying that they would be in any way, shape or form biased towards Lewis. But Martin is a seasoned campaigner. He is the biggest, the longest serving commentator in the business, and so he's seen it all. He drove for me for several years, way back in 1982 even. So he's not going to tell lies, and he's going to say how it is. However, there's a couple of things. When he says Verstappen brake tested him, I don't understand two things in this instance. I don't understand why Max had to move. When you allow somebody to pass you, you normally keep in the same trajectory. I mean, you don't move off the line, and he did move off the line. Having said that, what on earth, knowing what he knows at this stage of the season, what Lewis Hamilton knows about Max Verstappen, why did he have to go so close to him, and why did he have to follow him and if you like, get sucked into the situation? He was so lucky not to break the front wing off. As it was, he just cut one at the side wings, and obviously it was going to affect his understeering. It was going to create more understeering, but it didn't actually, because he went on to drive magnificently. Having said that, he put himself in a vulnerable position by, for whatever known reason, I don't know. Why did he need to go right up to the back of Verstappen? What was he trying to prove?
It seems he claims he didn't know what was going on, that Verstappen had been told to let him pass. This is lap 37. He was told to let him pass, and it seems the information wasn't given to Hamilton quickly enough. So he said, I didn't get the information. It was very confusing. I wasn't sure if it was some crazy tactic on Max's behalf. The message started to come through as he hit the brake, and he also added, well, it doesn't matter for Verstappen if we both don't finish, I need to finish. But the stewards concluded Verstappen had braked suddenly and significantly, and so they gave him another 10-second penalty. In fairness to him, Verstappen seemed to be doing what he was told to do. It's just that Hamilton didn't seem to know what was happening.
Look, we could be here till this time next week discussing the merits and otherwise to this particular case. The judges and the stewards have all of the camera work, and let's be honest about it, they have the printout of exactly what happens to the throttle movement and all of the things coming out, because it's all on sensors. There's no hiding place in Formula One anymore. So if you do something silly, then you're going to be nailed for it. So the judges and the stewards have seen that Max put his foot on the brake. For me, that's unnecessary. When you're letting somebody pass, you just slow down. You don't need to put your foot on the brake. But then why did Lewis put himself in such a vulnerable position to allow Max to do such a thing? Because had the front wing gone off and broken, I think Max would be probably almost crowned champion at the moment, because by the time he got back, by the time he put a new front wing on the thing, it would have been an unbelievable drive for him to score points. So some feature of luck for Lewis here. I think Lewis has learned a lesson, and that is Max Verstappen is not someone that is to be treated lightly in terms of trying to pass him. And we've seen that in other areas in terms of his starting and his starts. I mean, those starts were simply phenomenal. I've never seen starts like that. So please remember that Max has in his mind, he believes that his car is not quite as good as the Mercedes, so he has to make up for it in other ways. Aerodynamically, it's probably slightly better than the Mercedes, but certainly under power. And maybe Red Bull have to look at the situation, maybe trading some of the benefit that they have in the aero department next weekend, and giving themselves more straight line speed, because they certainly will need it. Abu Dhabi is a circuit where, we know how good Lewis has been there before, but we know how Max is. So it'll be a huge event. My belief is that Adrian Newey will sacrifice some of the brilliant aerodynamics that he has on the car and probably let the car be quicker, certainly in the qualifying, and then take a view. Well, he has to sort out the race and the qualifying together, but he will take a view as to what it is. But I think Red Bull have to go into this with a different thought process, because if they go in as a straight fight as they would have probably thought, I think Mercedes will beat them. That's my guess.
Another quote from Hamilton, who, again, is not a disinterested party here. I tried to keep my cool out there. I've raced a lot of drivers through my life. I've come across a lot of characters. There are a few who are over the limit. They don't think the rules apply. He's over the limit for sure. I've avoided so many collisions with that guy, and I'm always the one who has to do that. Now, Verstappen is saying he wants proper racing, and Formula One is now increasingly just about penalties. If we step back from the specifics of last night, is Verstappen reckless generally, or is there a degree of, racing? I mean, it's about being aggressive as well. It's about doing what you can to win. So I'm curious more generally, as opposed to just last night, is some of the criticism of Verstappen harsh?
If you had 10 ex-team bosses, ex-team race drivers, world champions, call it what, they'd all have different views on this.
Right.
Do I think he's over the line? He's certainly on the borderline, that's for sure. But he has a sense of aggression that, is it intimidating? Oh, I think it probably is. And providing it's not dangerous and within the rules, good luck to him, because if he's able to put a certain aura about himself in a certain given situation, that if it's a 50-50 tussle, he is never, ever going to back out of that. And so you have to give him some credit for being ultra brave. I mean, some of the moves he takes on, it's unbelievable. I've never seen it like some of these, particularly those start lines, coming from third in the grid to diving up the inside and trying to take out the two drivers alongside him. I mean, I don't mean take them out. He doesn't hit them. He has a very brilliant ability to know the width of his car and what he can get through. Now, you could say that they run off the track a bit and he pushes other drivers. But one thing for sure, Lewis Hamilton said what he said, you have to say he has him a bit rattled. So for sure, Lewis made phenomenal starts yesterday. And what he will be trying to do in his bed tonight, he'll be thinking about, how am I going to get pole position? Because I need to drive away from this guy. I need to be as far away as possible. And if I can get Bottas up between him and me, that's the perfect scenario. But is it going to be as easy as that? I don't think so. We're going to see lots of twists and turns between Friday practice and qualifying, and then the qualifying on the Saturday, and the race, of course, on the Sunday. I don't think there'll ever be as many people watching worldwide, because it's just caught everyone by the attention of it. And of course, you have the young cub in Max, and you have the old star with Lewis looking for his 8th title. You couldn't script this. This is a story that's sort of, it hasn't been invented. It's happening in front of our eyes. It's real. This is history. This is something that is remarkable. And sure, I spent my life in motor racing, so I'm probably as excited about it as anyone. And I am, because I'm intrigued by it. Now, if I had a driver like Lewis Hamilton, what would I be saying to him? I say, Lewis, for me, you have displayed, certainly from Brazil and other races since then, that you are the quickest driver in the world. You've got 7 titles. You do not need to be apprehensive. You do not need to be in any form intimidated or bullied, because that's the way he's beginning to sound like. And I'd be calm him down and make him focus on what is required to do, and he has to go and get pole position. Ironically, yesterday, he would not have had pole position had Max finished a lap. But then it goes to prove that Max is so on the line of just, he was glancing each and every wall. The guy is phenomenal. Make sure that everybody realizes how good Max is.
Yes.
And he also is in the belief that he is in a car that traditionally from the beginning of the year has been inferior to this Mercedes, which is the all-conquering Mercedes car over the last number of years. And the best way to do that is that Bottas is a bit of a star, but Bottas is nowhere close to Max Verstappen. So that would give you an indication from me as to what Max is doing to try to compete with Lewis. So he believes the only way he's going to do it is if he absolutely draws the line. And let's assume that the two crashed into each other. And it should be well known at this stage that if the two crash into each other and they fail to finish, the world champion will be Max Verstappen by virtue of the number of Grand Prix he's won this year. I think this would be number 9. And as a result, that will not go unnoticed to Lewis. He'd be thinking, God, I've got to get around. Even if it means letting him away with it, he's going to have to think about that, because in a 50-50 battle, he knows that Max will never bail out, and he has to take his chances and try and pass him either by undercutting him at the pit stop and the tyres or whatever, or try and take his chances on the DRS, pass him on the straight when he's following Max. So there's a number of different scenarios there, but I wouldn't want to come down to that. I would like, if I was Lewis's boss, I'd be saying, Lewis, just get pole, and that puts a lot of things on the plate. Make a good start and get away. You're controlling the situation then. And as far as Max is concerned, he has to find another gear. And I don't think that ultimately, even with the tyre choices they chose yesterday, was it reckless? No, they probably hoped that there was going to be another stoppage and that was going to help them. But, Red Bull were on the back foot, I think, from early on. And we're very lucky that race with the Schumacher accident got stopped, because it allowed them to put new tyres on the car. Putting the mediums on, a long way to go on that race track with a one-stop to have those medium tyres. I would have gone for the hard myself. Of course, it's easy to be wise after the event. But you saw the way that Lewis was able to, once the track rubbered in and the tyres got better, the fuel load came down, you could see how Lewis was more akin to the circuit. He was enjoying himself and he was slinging the car around all over the place. So who knows what's going to happen?
Well, you've painted the whole picture so brilliantly there, and the dynamic is fascinating. Damon Hill was talking along similar lines to you when he was saying that Lewis now has to be very cautious. He said he's not intimidated, but he's very wary of Max. And it was so striking that last night, in the immediate moments after the race, Lewis Hamilton did say it's okay for him if we don't finish. So Hamilton is acutely aware of this dynamic, and You know, any of us with a passing interest in Formula One immediately thought of Senna and Prost. All those years ago, and that dynamic. Now, do you think Max Verstappen...
Yes.
Do you think Max Verstappen is it's clear here, this guy's a killer and a winner. I mean, first turn, second turn, if that option is there, I presume... I mean, anyone talking to him would say, don't do this. Try and do this the right way or you will go down in infamy. This would not be a way to win your first World Championship. But maybe he won't care about that.
How do I answer that one? I think, you know, it's not just the Senna Prost. There's a lot of other Formula 3. I remember a Formula 3 championship way back in the 80s that I was involved in. Bruno Giacomelli, and he won a championship, and other people... there's a number of different cases where drivers sat on the grid facing the other driver that he needed to knock out, and he drove straight into the side of him. These things will happen, but you won't get away with that, because then there would be horrific penalties and the world would be so much against Max Verstappen. At this stage, most of the young people want the young Cobb. They want him to, you know, what crowds and the levels of support that he's brought to Formula One is simply phenomenal. You know, there's grandstands just coloured in that orange, whether you're from Holland or not from Holland. He has a huge fan base. Lewis is slightly different because, yes, the people in Britain like him and a lot of other people worldwide like him, and he has a big message to send. He's become quite political and outspoken in terms of all sorts of different subjects, not just motor racing. So there is a hot and cold tap there that needs to, some people love him and some people maybe not so much. So what do I think is going to happen? My view is that I do believe that Max comes from parents that I know, and I think they will be saying to him, Max, do the right thing. Drive as hard as you can to be legal, but make sure that if you don't win this next year, and you've come out of this as an absolute megastar for one of the greatest seasons of Formula One, excitement, competition-wise, he needs to be seen as a sportsman. And there were some things yesterday that I thought were getting very close to that. Do I think he passed the line? It was on the edge, for sure. But I would not go so far as to say that he was unsporting. I think there was, on the so-called brake test, I think it was a complete mismatch. He should not have moved the car. When you're letting somebody pass, you stay in the same line. He didn't.
Because he came across to the left a touch.
He moved ever so slightly. You could see the movement. And don't forget, the stewards would have been able to see that any movement on the steering wheel is a bit like a cricket bat. When a ball hits the bat and we don't see it or hear it, you see the flick up and that's it. Yeah. They see that. And they also would see the brake test. But what they should also see is the driver behind has to beware. So you know what the rules of the road, it's the same thing. The driver behind should take enough caution to make sure he's able to make the pass without any problem. Lewis didn't do that. He drove right up against the back of him. What did he need to do that for? Did he want to do that to intimidate Max? Did he want to show him, I've stopped you now, I've been allowed to pass you? Why did he do that? I don't. Listen, only he can answer that question. But I hold maybe 70% of the blame to Max because he did move the car and he did break the test. Maybe 80%, 80-20. You must never, no driver should ever brake test another driver. That's a given right from the very beginning of my racing life, and I'm sure every racing driver that's ever sat in a competition car will have said, you must never brake test a driver because it happens so quickly, you've nowhere to go, and you're straight into the back of them, and that's it. But the problem about that is you rule out the chance that both cars could be knocked out. Now, you might rightly say that would help Max's situation, and of course it would. However, if you are going to brake test somebody, you need to do it properly and not just knock off the edge of the wing. So I don't know where you go from there.
Okay. In a word, who would you like to win?
I've actually, and this sounds ridiculous, and I'm not saying this because I don't want to get off the fence. On one side of myself, I've seen Lewis grow up. I'm extremely friendly with his father. Anthony Hamilton, that whole family are particularly nice. The problem for me is that I know both sets of families. And I both socialise with them in different ways. Both of them live in Monaco, as indeed do I. And so I see them all the time. And in fact, Lewis lives in the very same block as mine, but do I ever see him? Very seldom. So there's no preference on the private side. And I want to see the best driver. I'll decide that how I see how Max behaves. If Max was to behave and to be sporting and to give everyone a chance to see how this unfolds, and if he was to win it and win it fairly in that set of circumstances, then I'd be so pleased for Max. On the other hand, if Max behaved just over the top, too hard or reckless, then for sure you'd have to go with Lewis and Lewis. But, you know, there's such a fan base for both of them. I think that's a question you could ask 1,000 people, and I think you get 1,000 different answers, although one or the other, you wouldn't get them all different, of course. But, you know, it's not something, and this isn't nothing to do with nationality. But the great thing about motorsport, it's not like football or things like that. Football is more tribal. If you come from Liverpool, you're either Everton or you're Liverpool or whatever it is. And this is not a situation. I'd say Max has just as many fans in the UK or in Ireland as Lewis has. I'm not sure Lewis has as many fans in Holland as Max has. But you know, the gist of what I'm saying is globally, they're both huge new stars. Well, Lewis not so new, but if he was to go out with 8 world champions, I don't think there's anyone that would begrudge him. And I think the turning point for most people was how he drove in Brazil, which was simply astonishing. I didn't think that was possible. The penalty he got to start at the very back of the grid, it was kind of confusing because he didn't get the penalty to start at the back of the race. He got the penalty to start at the back of the qualifying. It's not quite the same thing because he has 2 chances to move up the grid, which he did do in the qualifying. So I'd love to hear an answer from the stewards as to why that was the rule and regulations. However, leaving the race itself was, if anyone needs reminding of it, they should flick back to wherever they need to do and see the last 8-10 laps of the Brazilian Grand Prix and how he was able to come from where he came from to win that race. And I think a lot of people will be saying, certainly people who have either been close to the sport, who've driven in the sport, maybe not even towards Formula 1 levels or hasn't won Grand Prix, everyone will have a view who's able to and has driven a competitive car, and they will say, wow, what an unbelievable move that Lewis did there, and it probably deserved to win a world title as a result of it. Then on the other hand, you have to say, look, Max hasn't had the same car. He's brought it to the same level after all of these number of races. He's brought it to a level where they are both equal. And this is phenomenal because, you know, when somebody is the underdog, and you have to assume that Max is the underdog here, and people want the underdog to win. So my guess is I think Max will start the race with the most people behind him, and that's not really an issue. What it does mean is that he has to win the race for himself, his family, his team, and everyone surrounding it. And that's what I want to see, a fair race. I want to see something that's tough, hard. And, I've heard what Lewis has said yesterday, but remember what he said last week and the week before? He said, I just so enjoy racing with this guy because he is so tough and he makes me extend myself to a level that I didn't know was there. So in a way, that's a big compliment. Yeah. And I did also notice after qualifying, when the 2 of them got out of the car, and you wouldn't expect it, just if you wanted to look back, and I just said, wow, that was something I didn't. Lewis was standing there just outside the weighing scales. Max came in, got weighed, and on his way out, they gave him the fist bumps. Now, he didn't need to do that. And I think deep down, my guess is that Max is an extremely well brought up boy. He knows the value of right and wrong. He has a particularly nice family. He has come up the hard way. By that, I mean, he's been racing since he's 2, and his father being an ex-Grand Prix driver. His mother probably is even a greater driver than her husband. She's, as a family, you couldn't meet a perfect scenario where the mother and father are deeply engrossed in a sport, and they will want their son to do the same. So he will want to do the best thing for himself and everybody else. And he won't care about Lewis. And he's such a cool character. If you see him being interviewed, he's certainly not fazed.
No, man, is he not fazed. Eddie Jordan, pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Great to have you on Irish Radio again. Thanks, Eddie.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.